roof. So I had to, I had to pay attention to that. But I'm here now and people should be able to get in. And there's Ryan. I just need to send Ryan the budget. Okay. All right. Capital planning, no. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hey there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're just missing Bob. We have 6 out of 7 from Finance Committee.
Yeah, that would be Bob.
Plus we have Ryan.
Ryan's here. Yeah, he's not visible yet, but he's here.
Okay,
There he is.
Here he comes.
Hi, everyone.
2, 3, 4, 5,
okay.
6.
We can call a meeting to order,
Great.
off and running. And we'll be finished at a reasonable hour.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay,
I'll hold you to it.
okay. All right, first we have minutes of the 420 meeting that AJ sent us, I think yesterday or the day before.
Yesterday.
I just had one item, AJ, or for everybody, under bullet number 1, or excuse me,
Mhm.
item number 1,
Mhm.
the town assessed value. See the 1, 2, 3, the 4th bullet down under
Mhm.
sources of new assessed value.
Yes.
You have 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Yep.
but there's another 1, and that would be utilities, which is
The-
$1.1 million.
Yep. That would make
Yeah,
that would make the math add up a lot better.
that would make the math add up.
All right.
1.4, you said?
1.1 million,
Oh, 1.
yeah,
Okay.
1.139, 860,
1.139860.
yes.
Okay.
And then everything else is right. Then that 1588 adds up with the numbers above it.
Okay. That makes sense. Good catch. Thanks.
And I have a suggestion on page 2,
Okay.
number 7. It says town building repairs line has been zeroed out. That was line 67 that got zeroed out. And the
Okay.
amount appears in line 174 and it's $5,000. So that would be helpful to know.
Okay. So I should refer to the line number, line 67.
Yeah, I
And
think,
it was, and it has been zeroed out.
Yep.
And should I say something about how it was previously budgeted at what amount did you say?
so it now appears on line 174 for 5,000,
Oh, I see. Got it.
where that money is.
Okay. Thanks. All right.
Mhm. Then, looks good.
I just had a couple of typo types things.
Yeah,
On that
please.
that page 2, a little farther down,
Mhm.
is item, was that a 9, the veterans benefits line?
Yep.
In that middle sentence there, it talks about that it says BT informs the committee that our town, that should be treasurer.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yep.
A treasured treasurer.
Yeah, treasurer.
Oh, he's not even here to hear that.
Actually, he is.
You have to say that again, Susie.
Oh, he's not here. He stepped out.
Our treasure
No,
Yeah,
treasurer.
there he is.
I'm listening, don't you worry.
Good. You're treasured. And then the last, right at the end, just another minor typo on
Yeah.
5 other committees updates.
Yep,
I think that's ARHS.
yeah.
No, it's.
No,
I think
it's public, Amherst Regional Public Schools.
Yeah,
Yes,
page 4. Mhm.
Oh, okay, well, then there should be ARPS farther down then.
yes, in the sentence.
No, it is that the region is having trouble finding a way so the students don't have, the elementary school kids don't have to ride with the high school kids. So that's why they're 2 different references,
Oh,
acronyms.
So it
so they're
specifically
both
is,
right.
Yeah,
so
they're
it
both right.
specifically is high school, not just high school and middle school.
Okay.
Oh, that's true.
I'm asking because I thought the middle school rode with the high school.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think I think they both should be ARPS, actually.
okay,
Do you agree, Susie? Yeah.
sure.
If we're gonna be particular,
So
Any
I make
other,
a motion.
was that a motion, Susie?
Yeah, I make a motion to accept the minutes of as
Second.
amended.
second,
You take a vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Oops, I think I missed me. Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I. Okay, next we have a planning board budget request. This was sort of a, I guess, a last minute, something came up. There's a new need that the planning board wanted to raise with us for a new need for the fiscal year 22 budget. Does that sound
Yeah.
right? Is that Deacon? I don't think I know you. I guess
Jim.
you're a Deacon. Or either that or you're 47 WMIQ.
And he's muted.
And you're muted.
There.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, I'll be 47 MWIQ for the moment. But, yes,
I haven't met you, so I'm guessing you're a Deacon.
I am. I'm
And I'm
sorry.
Jim Walton.
Thank you. Thank you. So normally we don't have much of a budget and we don't spend much. This year, we're expecting a couple of different things. One is a very much larger need for legal advertising. Should we have 5 special permit applications for the solar, that expense might be as much as $5,000, which is way out of our normal range. I mean, we've often paid for legal advertising in the past, but out of our regular budget, but we've never seen a number like this before. So we need that. A second thing is needing some money to reimburse members for recusal issues. Abutters to parcels where special permit projects are going on are recused from voting on that issue unless they can get a real estate professional to attest to there not having any potential financial impact and having the state ethics commission sign off on this. Michael DeCara has already done this with respect to one of the projects. I would have to do so for the one at the corner of Montague and Leverett Roads. Michael succeeded getting by all this on a claim that was less significant than mine. I don't think that planning board members ought to have to pay themselves for this recusal relief. I also don't think that the planning board should decide on it itself. It seems to me that the town being willing to pay for this ought to come to the town meeting. And so I'm thinking $5,000 for the legal advertising this year, $1,000 for recusal relief, and $1,500 for whatever else.
And when you say, I guess for whatever else, right now there is, I think there's a $2,000 right now set up for planning board expenses.
It could be. Well, I don't actually know. Normally, we pay very little attention to the budget because it's so small and we just take what's given to us.
Yeah. So what you're saying is what you think based on what you know right now, you have three needs. So there's 5,000 for legal advertising, 1,000 for recusals, and
Yeah.
then 1.5 thousand for
Yeah.
anything else
Yeah.
for a
And I
total
really-
budget.
And I really think that it's important that that recusal stuff be clear to everyone in the budget, because the town ought to decide whether or not that's a good idea. I certainly don't want to vote on it at the planning board for whether or not I get money or whether or not Michael DePauw gets money.
Yeah, AJ, and then
So-
Susie.
So just a couple of questions, clarifying questions on that issue. So the reimbursement is for the homeowners who will need to hire a real estate professional to do this
Planning board members,
certification.
planning
Right,
board
the-
members.
The planning board member who's abutting one of these sites that has a special permitting
Yes,
decision that has to be made. So the reimbursement is for them to hire a real estate professional to do this certification that
Yeah.
you were describing. Is that, do I understand that
yeah.
correctly?
yes.
Okay. And has any other entity in the town, like the select board, sort of weighed in on just the issues around whether this is an appropriate use of town, like, or is this the first, are we the sort of first town entity that's kind of considering this issue?
We did have discussion of this issue one night at planning board. Donna thought that the town could decide to do that. There has not been conversation about who should do it, but I'm thinking, my thought is that it ought to be the town meeting, because this,
Yeah.
I mean, I sure don't want to vote on money for myself.
Right. Well, I guess, yeah, and the reason I ask is just because, for the finance committee, I don't know, this sounds like sort of a policy making kind of decision, which doesn't quite, at least from where I'm sitting, doesn't quite feel like the right role for the finance committee, but I'd be curious what other members
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, Susie, you were
Um,
next.
Yep, so, isn't part of the process allows for members on the, planning board to recuse themselves, leaving the other 6 members to make the decision?
It's still the case that it's, to get a 2/3 vote, you have to have 5 votes to approve a project. There get to be serious attendance problems when members can't vote. And that's, it's really hard to make, I mean, over several hearing sessions where members are not allowed to miss more than one meeting and still be able to vote. Maintaining quorum is horrible. It's really essential as much as possible that members can vote.
But a person that's recusing themselves can come and listen, they just can't vote?
Yeah, oh yeah, they can listen, but they can't vote, and voting's the key. I mean, we can't approve a project without 5 yes votes.
But will there be likely more than one, for each permit, will there be likely more than one member that has to recuse themselves?
The problem comes that a special permit hearing takes place over plural sessions. And the members, in order to maintain the ability to vote, a member can't miss more than one session. This is really hard. Rounding up quorum becomes a really hideous issue during these special permit processes.
I guess I don't understand the relationship between a person needing to be recused and that person continuing to attend meeting just cannot vote.
What I'm saying is to get to a decision on a special permit, you need to get to 5 votes. It's 5 votes regardless of the number of people who are eligible to vote. And attendance at the meetings and maintenance of the ability to vote becomes really quite difficult. It was really hard with Wheelock to make sure we had the votes to do whatever we were going to do. And having one person recused makes it a lot harder.
Jim, did you have something? Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
why don't we take the money for this out of FinCom reserves? It seems like a good, that would be a worthy expense. The planning board is going to be under incredible pressure coming up, considering all that's been said about about AMP solar and people protesting. I think we ought to back this one.
Yeah,
That's fair.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Deacon.
It was my thought that paying people for reimbursing for recusal relief really is a policy issue. And I was just thinking that if it were a separate line item, there could be a vote at town meeting. That was where I was coming from, because maybe people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe people think that's wrong.
Yeah, George.
A couple things. I don't think we can use FinCom reserve because this is a known expense. FinCom reserve is for emergencies or unanticipated costs. So if we're anticipating this cost for FY22, I don't believe we're going to be allowed to use it out of FinCom. I mean, technically speaking, does that mean we could do it? Maybe we could, especially year-end transfers. Second thing is, if we put it in the line item, we are adding this particular one was $1,000. It's in the line item. We just need to remember in subsequent years that we might not need it and we should take it out. So we need, even the 5,000, we just need to make sure year to year. And then thirdly, as far as policy goes, if this is a required cost that a person who is working on a board committee would have to incur to perform their duties, then it's like an employee traveling or doing anything else where they use personal funds to conduct business for the town. To me, this policy may already be in place, because an individual who is representing the town and working for the town should not incur personal expenses to do their job. And if that's what's required here, then I'm totally okay with putting it in the line.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I said, because I really didn't think, I really didn't want to pay $500 to be able to vote. I mean, on a project that's a mile from my house. I mean,
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little bit stuck on the policy and what is the approach, you know, and whether the FinCom is qualified to determine how this fits with policy. I just wonder if this should be consulted, whether we consult with our legal counsel or with the select board. To get
I'm
there.
happy, whatever. Mostly I
Yeah.
just want to raise the issue because,
Yeah.
I mean, I expect that I'm gonna want to spend the $500
Yeah,
and I don't really think I should have to.
right. It's just a question of whether it's what's the right way to manage this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
As much as anything, I wanted to give you a heads up on the issues we were facing, and I don't. It's not really important to me how these things get paid for.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the $5,000 that's just legally required. If the applications come through.
Becky,
Deacon, did you say 5,000 plus 1,000 for two $500 payments and plus another 1,500 for a total of 7,500?
I did.
Okay,
So we already have on line 57, planning board expenses already for general are 2,000. So maybe that covers the 1,500 part.
yeah, so this was what the overall on this is it's looking at a $5,500 increase on the budget item versus what's currently in there.
Wouldn't it be 6,000, the 5,000 plus 1,000? Although he's talking about having them listed as separate lines.
Well, if we got 2,000 in the budget already and this total
Oh, I see.
7,500,
Right.
that's what
I
Jim is saying.
Well, although he is talking about having it listed separately, although maybe the 5,000 wouldn't get listed separately because it's
Yeah.
the legal expenses.
I really wanted to be as out front as possible with the 1,000 because that is in fact a policy thing.
Yeah,
I hate to create separate lines just for 1 year.
I
I don't know
I
how
agree
the
with that too.
calculus about, yeah.
Yeah. Becky,
I think it can be, I mean, even if you don't break it out as a separate line, it can be, you can talk about it up front and make people aware of it.
Well, yes, on town floor, when we're going over the lines, we should probably flag that. If nobody else does, the FinCom should flag it and mention to everybody why we're going from the small amount that they see for fiscal 21 to this large amount that they're going to see for fiscal 22.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that, Becky. We should. I'm sure somebody's going to flag it. I mean, a big jump like that is not going to get missed.
Yeah.
The percentage on the right is going to be like 500.
Especially in the current environment.
Yes.
Okay, so what is the finance committee altogether? Are you gonna include the 2,000 already in the budget and want to add 5,500, or is it some other number?
I guess my thought, just a suggestion is we look at a $4,500 increase and see if we can get an answer from, unless we all feel comfortable that we don't need to have a discussion with our legal counsel or with the select board on the proper approach. I'd hold off for 4,500 right now, awaiting guidance on the additional 1,000. I think Becky was next and then AJ.
That's why I was keying in on Deacon has already talked about this with legal counsel, and I can confirm.
It was a passing, and it was a throwaway line at a meeting, but
Okay,
she does
so we
believe
can
that it's
confirm.
possible to do it.
Okay, so I'll confirm with her how she would like to see it done.
Yeah.
And could you guys vote the additional money contingent upon Donna's input on her approval?
I'm okay with that approach. I just want to make sure I heard the 5,000. Could you just go over a little bit, just quickly, Deacon, the 5,000
The 5,000 is for
for
legal.
the legal advertising?
Yes. That's for any special permit application, you have to run a legal advertisement twice. They're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I noticed in the recent paper that the COVID acknowledgement takes up several more words. So I just figured $500 for each ad.
So 500 times 2 for each, times 5 potential.
Yeah. That's the math I used.
Okay, thanks.
And hope if we can do it for less, if we can, that'd be great. I mean, maybe we can cut some words out, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, there's a nice little subsidy for the newspapers here.
True.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we increase the planning board budget line for fiscal year 22 from $2,000 to $7,500.
Do you want to add contingent on final confirmation from our legal counsel on that, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
you just did.
Okay,
I second that.
all right. Any further, okay, Susie?
So I believe that the recusal process is something the state has set up, and it allows the 7 members to go down to a 6-member group, and that gives them 5 votes. So that is why, for any one project, because it doesn't appear that there's 2 recusals needed for any one of the 5 permits. So I'm going to stick with the recusal process.
Becky?
I believe that the planning board already has one person who has to recuse himself outside of these 2 situations.
Oh,
So they, you know,
Hmm.
so they already have a problem.
Yeah.
so it's really 6 members, and they need 5 to be on every project. And if one is recused, and that would just make those 5 people need to show up and vote
Every time. Yeah.
every time.
Jim?
Let's not get too complicated about this. This is a very important process that Deacon is putting himself through, and and the town through. I think we should just vote on it and give him the money right now. And I second George's proposal.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay,
Arvanitis, aye.
Here, I.
Bob here. Hemingway, aye, but we didn't hear from Bob because he's muted.
Bob, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, no.
Walton, aye. Deacon, thanks for taking some time and giving us the update.
Well, thank you. I really wanted to let you know this is a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We appreciate the help.
All right,
Good luck in the future. Good luck next year.
Thank you.
thanks.
I'll sign out.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
All right, we've got fiscal year 22 capital plan with capital planning committee. Becky?
So I talked to Ellen, and as you all know, our projects have been, right now, the only project that they have approved is the library, but they still have the HVAC system at the elementary school that is being worked on. Capital Plan has another meeting on May 17th. And I hope maybe that can be combined with FinCom, but they won't have, at the conclusion of that, maybe a quorum of FinCom members can go to that meeting. But it didn't seem like they were prepared to meet with the finance committee because they're down to only one project, the library. The other request for windows has been tabled or denied. And so the main thing they're working on is the HVAC system, and there's not a solid quote at this time. Potentially a maximum of 200,000, but it's all conjecture. And so they want to get down to a better number before they meet with you all about it.
Susie,
Is that one likely to be able to be covered by the American Rescue Plan?
We won't know till after the 10th. We don't have guidelines, specific guidelines from the American Rescue. They're coming out next week.
May 10th, okay.
So that'll, excuse me, that'll come out before our next capital planning. This is a key aspect of this problem from capital planning standpoint. What could be paid for with federal state money. So that's we're going to be meeting on the 17th. The building committee's meeting tomorrow night. Hopefully we can put together some rough, at least some rough kind of outlines of what the problem is and what the cost is going to be. And Becky will have better information about what funds are available to the town, because it seems to me that it's very arguably a good public health measure to improve the operation of HVAC system at the school.
AJ,
So if we determine that the American Rescue Funds can be used for that purpose, and I guess any other purpose, FY22 purpose that's being considered, would we be adding a line to our revenue budget that encompasses those funds that we anticipate using next year? Is that how that would work in terms of?
Would you have to put in the
for the
revenues and
purpose-
also the expense?
Right, of course, yeah.
Okay,
That's
Becky.
AJ, it'll go into, if you're on your expense report, you'll
Mhm.
potentially see the money come in there.
Mhm.
It won't impact the appropriated budget at all. So all the work you're doing is on the appropriation
Okay.
side of the budget. So no, it has no,
I see.
it
So
does not
so
impact what we're doing.
okay. So it's essentially would be in that case, in that scenario, it would be sort of a transaction that happens outside of the budget appropriation process that we're finalizing here. Okay, I got it.
Susie,
And
and then
it-
George.
That's how the CARES Act worked, right?
Yeah.
Those were items not listed in the budget, then they were deficit, then they were paid back by CARES, and then it washed out.
Got it.
And I see on the expense report that various grant monies are listed, delineated there, including the CARES Act money and the balances and what's been expended from them.
what's also on there is the grant money that we've received for the culvert. So Becky, you were saying that what the capital planning board is working on is the HVAC system for this elementary school. But aren't there going to be expenditures next year for the culvert in the roof and any other items?
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, which a statement that Ellen McKay makes repeatedly at capital planning. They are reviewing projects. They are not responsible for the funding. They are making recommendations of projects to the finance committee. It is the finance committee, not capital plan or any other committee. It's a finance committee that determines the funding of those projects, whether it be the, CARES Act or reserves or free cash or capital stabilization
Well, my question is,
or appropriation.
can we anticipate that they're going to be asking to fund those things? That's my question.
Yes, yes. But they have handed those off to you because these are items that have been out there for a long time and they are already moving forward. We've had the grant for this, our third year. We've had the municipal small bridges grant of $500,000 for the culvert. We originally had an estimate of about $1 million. We don't have a significant change in that estimate. It's still about $1 million, maybe 1.1, depending on the trends in building costs. But we are working diligently to have the bid, which we're hung up by DOT District 2 right now, waiting for them to release it so we can go out to bid. But the bid package is ready to go. We're waiting on DOT. So But the costs we're gonna tackle tonight in conversation with Ryan. The costs that we are looking at, to be conservative on the culvert, I would say $1.1 million, minus 350,000, for potentially a cost of 750,000. And the rough estimate that was given by the engineer for the roof, the gym roof replacement is about $260,000. So those two together, we're talking about the question at hand for the finance committee tonight, in conversation with the treasurer, is the best way to finance $1 million.
Yep. Becky, just for clarification, you said 1.1 million is the estimate, and then you said that minus 350,000. But then earlier we talked about a 500,000 grant. So I'm just trying to box
Right,
balance
and-
the 500,000
okay, so-
grant with the 350,000.
Okay, so the $500,000 grant, 150 of it was budgeted to pay for the design work. The engineers have been working on it for 18 months and, and are not yet
Okay.
complete. So
So-
150, so it's 500 minus 150.
Okay, so there's 150
Ballpark,
already
yeah.
spent, and there's 350 remaining.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So the 60,000 that we spent out of that line was only a preliminary expense for the design and engineering of this project? Because we have 60,000 showing on our expense report, deducted from the original $500,000.
I think that's what was spent this year, but there was money spent last year as well.
Well, it shows the balance is $440,000.
Okay, well, I will double check and see if there's an issue there. But the total, when they are complete, the estimated design costs were 150 through completion, and they will be involved through construction. So I'll have to review where that works out, but I'm pretty sure they will go to 150,000.
Okay. So the 150,000 for the design work may not have all been spent yet, but that is, it's expected that there will be a need for 150,000
Correct.
that would be pulled from the.
I'd be really appreciative if you could check into those numbers, because it seems to me that if we've already gone out to bid, the engineering's been done. So if we have deducted last year when we did the engineering and we paid 60,000 for it, if we've got specifications and design in order to go out to bid, then we've got the engineering and design done. So that suggests to me, just from what I could see, looking at the expense report, that we've got $440,000 to apply. So let's get that straight so we understand what we're dealing with.
Bob, their estimate is for 150,000. Their contract
Right.
is for $150,000, and they will be working with us through the construction of the project. It's
So-
not just because they have specs done that the work is complete. They are working with us. They will be advising on when we go out to bid. There'll be weekly meetings that they'll be monitoring the construction progress. So using 150,000 is the most reasonable approach at this point.
I got you. In other words, project management is going to be part of their fee.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so just coming back to what you have here, Becky, you have just over 1 million for the capital requirement for the two projects, the culvert and the roof, right?
Yep.
And then there's some discussion about the HVAC, and that might be another project, but that might be paid for by the CARES Act.
Yes.
Is that the thinking there? And wasn't there another small project that capital planning approved?
Yes, they approved the 25,000 for, but that's in the budget, so it's not part of the discussion tonight, or it could
That's
be
the library building fund.
annual.
Okay,
Where
there
we-
wasn't
where we-
another
Window
small
project.
project?
Yeah,
The-
the sliders.
The
The
sliders,
sliding
are
door
the
at the
sliders still in
elementary
there?
No,
Okay,
It
those
was-
are out.
sliders were denied.
Well,
Okay.
just to clarify, Jim, we approved $7,200 for the sliders in last year's budget, last year's process. And that $7,200 is still in there, has not been spent. And so during our discussions at capital planning, we determined that that would cover the cost of the unit that's going to be installed, the 2 sliding glass door units, and that the cost of installation could be paid for out of either school or building committee funds, so that we wouldn't have to include it in our capital building kind of application to the town for this budget.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Becky?
So Jim, there is one other issue on the horizon, and I think that's why Mary Ann is here tonight. Just to have consideration of moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. So this is something that's sort of come up pretty fast, and it could impact the capital, and that's why Mary Ann is here for the capital discussion. So maybe we want to add, maybe Mary Ann, you can summarize a little bit now what
Are you ready?
the grant project.
Yeah. So for a couple of years, I've been sort of mentioning this idea of a small library pilot project that the Board of Library Commissioners has been talking about. And it's the time, looks like the time is now. So they've been doing a lot of work. So the Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program has existed since 1987. And since then, the program has funded about 220 either new library buildings or additions, renovations, and conversion projects. And of those 220 projects, it's closer to 230, only 13 have been in small towns like ours. So the Board of Library Commissioners recognizes that it's difficult for small towns to complete a municipal construction project like a new library. And they've been trying to work on a way to help the smallest towns build the libraries that they need. So they're developing a small library construction pilot project that will offer expanded assistance to the smallest towns. For the small library project, so this pilot is coming up now. The Board of Library Commissioners is voting on it this week. The grant will be announced this spring, and they're hoping to award a project in the summer. And it's going to be more support from the MBLC. There's the construction specialists there are going to have a more hands-on approach, providing technical expertise to the town, and then a higher reimbursement rate. So instead of about 60% of the cost covered, they're going to cover 75% of the eligible costs. And the town's 25% doesn't have to be all cash. So the value of the land can count towards the match. The pilot is for new construction only. The goal of the project is to be as economical as possible. They have $3 million set aside for this project. The construction program covers fixed costs, so landscaping and pavement, equipment, fixtures, and furniture are not covered. And so it's a competitive grant, but there aren't a ton of towns with less than 2,000 people that are ready. And not everybody wants to do, it has to be new construction. It can't be an addition renovation. But there's going to be one award. We are a strong candidate for this program. And it's a pilot project, so it's a work in progress, and it's going to be a work in progress all the way through. It's an experiment. They want to work with the town so that they can then take this and use the information gathered in building this library to help other small towns. So we would, if we were the selected candidates, we would move forward with planning this fall and then construction in fiscal year 23. So that's as much as I know right now. Does anybody have any questions?
AJ,
Just a couple of clarifications for the notes. You said that the sort of special reimbursement rate for this pilot would be 75%? Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay, got
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And there's one award, and it is essentially a $3 million. I mean, that's the cap, but
That's the
assuming
cap.
that's with the budget. Okay, and do we have I know that there was a previous project a few years ago. So, and was that in the range of a $3 million budget? Or?
Right. So anyway, that $3 million would be the 75%. So,
Okay.
so that project was 10 years ago. And so, you know, so this is a thing where we just don't know. So what we would do is we would go into a planning and then design phase. And then, you know, the thing is, it can't be more than this amount, because that's the amount that they're willing to budget. So we would have to figure out, you know, what we want, what we need, and then plan around the resources that we already have, and then plan around it.
Got it.
So, but absolutely, we can build a fabulous library within this budget. So the last project was 3.4 million. But you know, building costs always go up. So
Right.
yeah.
But we would essentially be looking at a project that had a maximum expense of $4 million, right? If 75% is the $3 million cap. So that's essentially the scope of the project.
You know, so plus fixtures, furniture, and equipment.
Yeah, you said that. Okay.
And paving, but we have a highway department, and the fixture, furnitures, and equipment, the place doesn't have to be fully furnished to open up. So, you know, so
Okay.
anyway, that could be ongoing. Yeah. Any other questions?
Becky,
Miriam, would you just remind us how much between the town and your fundraising has been saved and set aside for this project to date?
We're pretty close to $500,000. If the $25,000 passes at town meeting, we will exceed $500,000. So we need that 25,000 from town meeting to get to 500, but it'll go over. It'll be 510,000. So
Bob?
Yeah, Marianne, what's the process for you to apply for a new library for this grant? What does that involve? And when do you, what do you do next? If you were to apply for it, when would you anticipate you would need money from the town or some agreement from town meeting to proceed?
So I don't know. It's still, so the application is going to be a more streamlined process than previous application process. It's going to be sort of like a more involved letter of intent instead of a full building program and feasibility study. And then they do all of that planning with the town. And those are things, I mean, I think there's a potential that we would have a special town meeting in the fall. But there's also a potential that sort of work of being able to say, this is what this project really looks like, and this is how much it costs, and this is how much we need from the town, that we won't have all of that information together, you know, by fall. So really, I don't know. It's a sort of a pilot project, and we would we would apply, we would see if we got accepted, and then that would be the next step.
Right, and I don't anticipate, and maybe I'm wrong about this, you can correct me if that's so, that the town is going to vote for anything until there's a specific proposal. Or at least-
So the town wouldn't vote on the town wouldn't vote to pursue the project, right, until there was a proposal. In the past, generally, when you apply for state grants, you ask town meeting for permission to apply for and accept and expend the grant. And that, but that would be, we want to apply for this grant so that we can participate in this program. And it wouldn't be, we're going to actually spend any money yet. So that vote will be coming up first. And then if we got the grant, then we would be having here's the specific proposal based on this grant that we got. Then we'd be having another vote.
Right, it's a step-by-step process, the way it was last time.
Right. With fewer steps, but definitely a step-by-step process.
Mike,
So I may have missed something here. So is this information you provided, Marianne, is this informational for the Finance Committee, or are you going to be asking the Finance Committee to do something that would be taking place at town meeting or something like that?
It's informational at this point. I don't think there's anything other than our $25,000 capital request that we've had every year since 2013. And the library's operating budget. There aren't any other finance related things. This is more about the Finance Committee's kind of long range planning. And when this pilot project, if we're the selected project, it's coming up sooner than we might have been thinking. So, the next big grant round isn't until 2026. So this is a special grant round that we have the opportunity to participate in, and that we're strong candidates for. So that's why I'm giving this information now. Because they're discussing their long-term capital plan tonight, right, Jim?
yes, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, this is the discussion we're in right now, which to me, if I do my math right, if we're looking at roughly $1 million project, of which the state would kick in about 3 million, and you have about 500,000 set aside right now, we'd be looking at a capital project in the range of about $500,000 additional to support
Mm-hmm.
our perspective.
Yeah.
But that's my
kind
math. Okay, Jim.
Yeah, it's more like 800,000. The library folks in Boston want the towns to want whatever town is chosen to come up with at least $1.3 million.
Jim, where did you get that information?
I attended the same meeting that you did, and that's what they said.
Jim, I think I wouldn't say that that's exactly what they said. I think that it could be that much, but they didn't say that the towns would have to come up with that.
Well, nothing is specific at all right now. It's still in the planning stage. They haven't even gotten confirmation from the commissioners and all of this. So it's still sort of very much up in the air, which is fine. And they want to make it a smooth, quick, streamlined project. But they did throw out that figure, and we may have to spend up to $1.3 million in order to make this work. That was very clear from what I heard.
Right. I would disagree with Jim's interpretation. I think they did say that. So, and I said earlier that the paving, the landscaping, and the fixtures, furniture, and equipment aren't included. Those could be, up to 10% of the cost. But but not every project is the same. And they also said that it's not all cash that is part of the project. So we already own the land that this project would be built on, whether it's behind Town Hall or Lot 032, and that's a significant value. So I don't think we need to be thinking that we need to come up with $1.3 million.
Becky,
So we do need furniture and fixtures. So if we rounded the 500 up to 650, and worst case potentially could be the 800, but just to have a ballpark number that there's this potential project out there, I think that's what we had tried to bring that number forward, because this could be needed in another year. So when we ask Ryan for his advice, I think there has to be some conversation with that, a potential ballpark number of that size.
I'm comfortable with that, Becky, with, saying 600 or 650. But actually, we need more information, and also I would just like to point out that some very dedicated and creative volunteers have been fundraising more than $25,000 a year. And I don't anticipate that's going to stop. So, it's not all going to be on the town. Anything else?
AJ.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, I mean, it seems to me like non-controversial that we would want to pursue this opportunity right now. I mean, there'll be issues to discuss in the future, but it sounds like we'd be lucky to be in a position where we're debating what's like an appropriate amount of money for the town to expend on this project. So I just want to make sure that the message that's being communicated here is like full-throated support for applying for this. Does anybody disagree with that?
I agree with it.
Yeah, that sounds.
Personally, I'd say that as Mary Ann said, it's a step-by-step project.
Right.
We haven't taken a baby step yet. So I'd like to review things as they develop personally before I just give my whole hog support to anything. It's particularly since it's a lot of money involved in this, and it's going to be a big discussion amongst the town citizens and so forth. And like any big project, there's going to be a lot of different viewpoints about it. So let's just take it step by step, and thanks for letting us know about this, Mary Ann.
You're welcome, Bob.
Question, Mary Ann, so it sounds like you have some pretty tight timeline coming up over the next couple of months. Are you all on track to do what you need to do, or?
Oh, Jim, I'm always on track.
Oh, yeah?
If it means I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm still at it at midnight, I've been doing this since 2011. So, and so whatever needs to be done to, for us to, I will put in the strongest application possible. I do think that our savings that we have both from town efforts and private fundraising efforts is a strong, is really something that's on our side. I don't know, other towns aren't in the shape we're in. And so I'm excited about it, and I'm confident that I can gather the information that they'll need for the application. I've done a much bigger, more comprehensive application process successfully in the past. So, so that I'm not afraid of that, Jim. Bring it.
All right. Well, let us know, Mary Ann, if you need the finance committee involved. I can't imagine what that would be right now, but whatever.
Yeah.
I hope you can exploit a lot of the work that you've done already in the past, and hope to a great extent that'll come through for you.
I hope so too. Yeah, I hope so. I've got the the old grant applications out and where, you know, there are pieces and then, so it's fine. You know, I know how to do this. This I can do.
We know
you
you,
know,
we know you can.
yeah. So, okay. All right.
Any other questions for Mary Ann? Comments? All good?
Go get that money.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary Ann, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for making room for me. All right. Take care, you guys. See you
Bye.
soon. Bye. Okay.
Okay. All right. So the dollars are adding up.
It does change the equation when we think about what we're doing for this year with the possibility of, anyways,
Could you go deeper, George?
I'm just saying, well, I think we should let Ryan do his job, but I'm just saying, now that we're looking at what we're gonna do this year with the culvert in the roof, I'm sorry, yeah, in the roof, knowing that this is a potential item within the next 2 years, may have an impact. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, in addition to that, George, the capital planning team, I think you have a 30-year plan or 25-year plan. So there's probably a couple other big items that are lurking over the next couple of years. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's lurking right now. I think the last time we looked at the long-range plan was in the fall. Are there a couple other ones that we need to be?
Just from my recollection of looking at those documents, there's nothing on the near horizon in that regard. The two big things, which we all know about, which are not just choices that we might or may not make, but choices that are pretty much been made by legal requirements and by practical requirements. That is the culvert and the school roof are projects which we've been saving for and we've been dedicating reserves for years. And we have significant money to spend on those projects. And those projects are imminent and absolutely necessary. So let's not forget that. And let's not keep on pushing back to some future date when we spend the money that we've taxed our people to provide for exactly this kind of thing. School roof, culvert job. And by the way, just to make a simple point about the $500,000 that has been raised by annual appropriation, $250,000 rather, since 2012. That is a reserve that has been created by the taxpayer. It's another capital reserve that has been put aside by taxpayer money. So let's not lose sight of that. It's not just money that's out there. It's money that's been raised specifically for capital project. So we've already done a considerable amount of that. But I'm really just concerned that we don't get sidetracked from funding the culvert and the roof substantially from our reserves, if not completely. And I would support completely funding them from our reserves.
Yep, Susie.
So I think we're ready to go into the discussion about specifics for how to fund the culvert and the roof. But the question was asked, things that are coming up, and I looked at the long range plan, and the only imminent thing in 2023 is the Ford Taurus for the police department to replace the 2015 vehicle. That's just a proposal on the long range capital plan. And then the school roof, it had in 2 sections. So I'm not sure how that was planned. There was, that was seen as 2 separate parts of the roof. And that I had a question about that in the long range plan.
Yeah. Becky.
I just want to clarify the 250,000 is only
Library.
in section of the roof. So that's why we still have another large portion. And I know a rough estimate of, which will be hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably $500,000 to $800,000 for the rest of the roof. Hopefully not. Hopefully it'll be less. But it could be as much as $500,000 very easily. And that needs to get done next year.
Definitely, it's very, very essential that that's done.
I think,
And there is still a process to apply to the state for that money, for the roof at some point, right? Is that correct?
A process to do what?
To apply to the state for that building improvement roof?
There is a process, but the state has not addressed their MSB, I mean, their school building assistance program. It was originally said that they moved the date from February to March or April. We're now in May and they're talking July or August. So there's not even been the ability to apply for that section, but we definitely will apply for it. But if it doesn't come through, we'll still have another project that needs to get done.
And when we apply, would we apply for both parts or just one part of the roof?
We could only apply for the remaining part. They do not reimburse for work that is done.
I just want to say, Becky knows this very well, and that we've had very, very bad experience with the state funding for the roof repair. Every year there's another, the way the application works, we have to wait very, very late in the day to apply for the money. We don't know whether we're going to be approved or not till another long delay has occurred. And I personally think we should just plan on buying the roof, and then sure, we should put in an application and see if it comes through. But we should definitely plan on buying that roof. And that's really needed. It's absolutely needed down there. The shingles, we've had repairmen down there on a regular basis for a few years now. And it's really not a good idea to not have a good roof on a building. That's sort of basic Bible tablet number 1 from Moses, who brought down from Sinai, I think, you know. So we got to get that roof addressed, and I don't have a lot of confidence that the state's going to pay for it. Hey, there's enough money floating around this year. Maybe we can grab some for that too. Who knows? But we should be planning on spending a good amount of money to replace that roof. Probably, like Becky says, up north of $500,000.
Susie,
So I need to understand this. What I understand is that there's 2 parts of the roof. We're all in agreement. First part's 260, the next part's 500,000 or more. And this part would not be reimbursed, and we're talking about how we're going to finance it. And the next part, we could put in an application and we might get that money. We understand that both parts of the roof need to be dealt with.
yeah, and when the $500,000 piece, the second piece, what's the timing? We're looking for that?
Next year as well,
Next summer.
next summer.
So it would be this fiscal year. We would need to build that into the fiscal year
Yeah.
22 budget.
No, 23.
This would be 23.
The subsequent year from the roof on the gym.
Yeah, so this is FY22 is starting in 6 weeks or 2 months. And then we'll do FY22. We hope to complete, well, we're going to complete the gym roof by the end of August. In FY23, we hope to do the other part of the roof because we'll need this summer to do the work. You can't have that kind of project done with students in a school.
Okay, so we do have a significant capital project lurking right going into 23, fiscal year 23.
Yep.
So I think for purposes of the discussion with Ryan, that's something to be considered. It's not just these $2 million of projects right now. We need to consider it could be followed up by another $500,000 project regarding the roof, and it could even be another $500,000 project regarding the library.
Yeah, and both of them could be north of 500,000.
Yeah.
It could be like 1.2 or 1.4. We don't know yet. It'll depend on the market. And plywood is, hopefully the prices will drop by then.
Yeah, so for purposes of discussion with Ryan, we're looking at definitely $1 million for this fiscal year, 22 coming up. And then maybe another $1 million plus in the subsequent fiscal year.
Yeah.
So if we could, I'm trying to track the projects in the fiscal years that we're referencing here, and we're all over the map with which ones we're talking about and when. So forgive me for not following as well as I would like to. Something that I feel like I might be missing is, Becky, you mentioned that there might be some project at the school something that's failing around 200,000. Do you remember, you mentioned that earlier and I haven't heard that discussed.
We are, there'll be a town meeting warrant in June for this a replacement gym roof at the elementary school. And a ballpark figure is $260,000.
For some reason, I thought you said it was like something electrical or something at the school, but I must have imagined.
Oh, that's the HVAC.
It's
system.
HVAC.
HVAC.
Yeah, and that's another $200,000. So if the American Rescue grant money does not allow us to use that, then the town would have to pay for that as well. But we are very hopeful that American Rescue will assist, at least in part, if not in whole.
Okay, now that's for FY22 as well.
Yes.
Okay, so FY22, I have the culvert, I have the gym roof at 260,000 and the potential HVAC. For FY23, I have a Ford Explorer potentially. I have potential project at the library. And then I have the actual roof repair of the gym. Is that correct?
Of the rest of the asphalt route.
Okay, so
So
the
it'll be a larger
260 for
project.
the 260,000 for FY22, that's partially looking at the roof and actually fixing it, or is it completely reviewing the roof?
It's complete, it's replacing the gym roof only.
Okay, thank
So
you.
then we have another 27,000 square feet of asphalt roof to replace in the following year.
All righty, fun stuff. Okay, am I missing any projects listed that you know of at the moment? Okay.
Okay, so you have,
Culvert, gym roof part 1, gym roof part 2,
Oh,
HVAC system, Ford Explorer, and library.
okay,
It's,
yeah, that sounds,
Brian,
it's not
Yes.
gym roof part two.
like
It's
school
the
roof
rest of
part
the
1
roof.
and part 2. The gym
Yes.
roof is part 1. The school roof is part 2.
yeah. So we're doing the gym first, then we're doing the rest of the building.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That looks better too. Okay. So are you looking for my opinion already, or are you still delivering?
We're looking for your opinion.
Yeah,
Well, I will say, I feel like I learned a lot more information tonight than I had prior to even coming to the meeting. So bear with me a moment. I was using a padded paper and I realized that I needed a spreadsheet for this. The dollar amounts got high very quickly, as is expected in budgets. So you're potentially, so I didn't take into consideration any grant money. So you said that there's another 5. Conservatively, if you weren't looking at any matches or anything, you're looking at $1.2 million each year. But you believe that with potential state funding grant money, it's really $1 million.
I think we're net of state funding. The numbers we gave you are net of grant money.
Okay. So what do you, then obviously my numbers aren't exactly right. So for the culvert, I have 750.
Yep.
For the gym roof, I have 260.
Mhm.
For the HVAC, I have 200. And then so moving on to the next year, oh, well, that's because I made up this number. I made up 50,000 for the Ford Explorer. I don't know if anyone has a better estimate.
I'm afraid you're right.
I feel pretty confident in that one.
sounds right.
For the library, I went high. I did 650. I can, if you want me to budget lower. I know you had
I
said
think that's-
600 and 650.
Yeah, 650 is reasonable for furniture and fixtures.
Okay, and then school roof, I have 500,000.
Okay, and that likely will go higher, but it's a good starting point.
All right, so that puts us at
Hopefully we can do it for that.
1.2 for each, 1,210,000 for FY22 and 1,200,000 for FY23.
Sounds right.
Yeah, so I had a pretty good thought process involved when I thought it was just FY22's 1.2 million. To add in a whole nother 1.2 in another year is substantial funding. I feel like the majority might not love my thought process here, but I am a believer that we have. It's great to have funds saved, obviously, but I do think that we have a substantially high free cash balance, in my opinion. I recognize the benefit of it and I recognize the thought process of doing it, but I mean, just an example, Department of Revenue recommends that you have between 3 to 5% of your operating budget in free cash, which would be way less than we have in there now. Even at the high end, 5% of our operating budget would put us at what, 300 something thousand, and we have 1.4 in there. So I do think that it's in the town's best interest, and that, speaking as if I was a citizen as well, take some of that tax relief off of the citizen. I don't need to tell the finance committee and the leadership here that Shutesbury, last year was the second highest town in Massachusetts for tax rate. So, to take that fund they've already paid in and put it towards the serious expenses you have coming up, knowing that in a year from now you might need to borrow, I think that would probably be a good idea. Or you could do the opposite. We could try to borrow this year, maybe split it 50-50, borrow half of it, take half from like free cash and capitals and stabilization, and then do the same again the following year. But I don't think the answer is to borrow all of it this year and borrow all of it next year. I think that free cash really needs to be tapped into, like, substantially. That's just my thought process.
Okay, George, I think you were first, and then George, go ahead.
So Ryan, what are the current, what would the interest rate be to borrow?
Depends on what you did. So say you do $1 million, I don't think you're going to do you could do a ban, which is a 1-year borrowing that you have to do again the following year. You're looking at around 0.9% roughly. Wow. If you were to, and of course, so you're going to pay interest on $1 million. That's not a lot of money. Then you'll do it again. You can do it up to 10 years total. You have to make a principal payment starting year 3. You could go out like 5 years and do a serial note right away on $1 million. You'd be looking at around 2.75% for that, we think, conservatively at 5 years. So, your interest over time probably around, shy of $85,000.
So for these items, what would you recommend for a loan life, term life?
Term life, I would probably, if you're going to do the $1 million, I would probably do the 5-year. If the intention really was to borrow, I wouldn't bother with the bands. I just don't see the rate for 2.75 at a 5-year note is a good rate anyway. So the typical reason why you do a band is because rates are really high, or so you have 2 reasons. The rates are really, really high and you're hoping they're going to come down before you go out for long term, or 2, you need to borrow the money while you're waiting for state funding to come in and cover the cost completely, or offset a large chunk of it before you permanently go out. In this case, that's not the expectation for these, maybe 200,000 of it, but you could always apply that to it or put it towards your capital projects next year.
So one of the things you might recommend, one of the things we should consider is if interest rates are expected to go up in the next year or so, could we lock into a current rate? And maybe if we're going to do any borrowing for all these projects, now might be the year to lock in.
I don't necessarily think rates are going to skyrocket in the next year, so I'm not necessarily saying that.
Okay.
I don't think I have. There's 2 people in the world. There's those that don't know anything about where rates are going, and those that don't know anything about where rates are going.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just a firm believer that I try to just accept that I don't know, but it's impossible to tell.
No, I understand. We all read the same stuff we hear. And then for me,
but you can't deny that rates are attractive right now. There's no arguing that. What we do know for a fact is what rates are today.
right, and less likely to go down than they are to go up. That's what I think. But because they're so low now, the Fed's money rate is 0. I can't imagine it's going to go any lower. So the only other question I had was, when you're talking about these debt service and how much we should borrow, if we were going to consider borrowing, I just want to understand borrowing. That's why I'm asking these questions. Mm-hmm. We have a limited capacity within the operating budget right now as to what the annual debt service can be. And it's my understanding it's around $113,000. So if we funded $1 million at 3%, the principal over 5 years, I forget what you said, 4 years, 5 years?
5.
Yeah, so, that's $200,000 a year in principal.
Right. You'd be looking at, you'd have to change that line to about 227,000 a year, roughly.
If we have a problem with the tax rate, I don't think we can.
Right, which is why I would recommend offsetting I would offset enough of that with your free cash to bring it down so that you're within the line item that you're already budgeting for. So say you did half of it, put your free cash at around 900,000, it puts the payment in a range that your budget is already comfortable for, and it has less of that, impact. That's just, again, my thoughts.
Yeah, and you're thinking,
You go ahead, George. George, wrap.
just last thing, and so I guess it's for everybody's edification. So when we're talking about free cash, just be aware, this is full disclosure. It would only require a majority vote on town floor to spend that money, as opposed to if we use stabilization funds, which are really the capital funds. Those are going to require 2/3 votes. So I just want to throw that out. That's it.
Okay, I think we had, it was Becky and then Bob and then Jim.
I'm passing.
Okay, Bob.
That's my
Yeah,
question.
okay, a couple of points. One, I appreciate what you said, Ryan, about spending our cash reserves down, because I completely agree with that. Let me just say this, we have, I don't know what our certified free cash is now. It's up higher than 800,000, I think, and we're close to $1 million in other reserves.
1.3 million.
Free cash?
Yeah.
Okay, plus close to $1 million in the other reserves. So we're talking about over $2 million in reserves right now. That would very easily cover all of the proposed expenses this year. I think we have to separate the things on our list. That is, the roof and the culvert are extremely, absolutely essential things to spend money on, to have done. The second part of the roof as well. The library is something we as a town have not decided to do at this stage. It's something that's somewhat speculative. There's a lot of support for it, but it's down the road when that becomes an actual project to a scheduled payment for, or to consider paying for. I personally believe, and I think some of us might agree with, that we have to spend the reserves down. I also want to make one point about what George said about the 50% rule for the free cash versus the 2/3. I don't think that any major spending should be done by 50% vote. I think the way it's set up for our capital, free cash should be supplying funds to the capital accounts. And then a capital account should be distributed based upon a 2/3 vote of the taxpayers. That's the right way to do it for big major projects. And I think that's the way we should be doing it at all times, except for emergencies. We should take that free cash, put it in the capital accounts, and spend it out. My proposal would be to spend it on the culvert and the roof this year. And then if we need to borrow in the future for whatever it is, whether it's more building or the library or what have you, then we'll borrow. But depleting our accounts this year, it would leave us still in very, very good shape in terms of our reserves. Certainly not down to where we would have to worry about it at all. So that would be my proposal, is for us to take this money and use it for what it was actually saved for, which is these major capital projects that we have to address this year.
AJ and Susie?
Yeah, just a quick question for Ryan. Is there any way in which our decision to fully pay for the FY22 projects, so that the gym roof and culvert, would there be any consequence to us paying that fully using our reserves, and not, would that have any impact on our ability to borrow in FY23 for some of the other projects that we've discussed? Is there any factor that we should be considering in terms of
bond rating? Like a bond rating?
Yeah, just in terms of
No.
qualifying for rates, or I just want to make sure I've got sort of all the factors that in my head that I should be considering here.
As long as the town, a perfect example, this would be the town of Orange. The town of Orange has virtually no free cash. It's very financially, the community struggles greatly, but our bond rating is great and our ability to borrow is great, because what that really is dependent on is your fiscal spending as a community. If you show responsible spending and responsible behaviors, you're able to get, you know, you can't exceed your capacity, it's just not possible, but you don't necessarily need to worry about that. If
Okay.
you're still within the DOR's recommended range of 3 to 5%, you're showing fiscal responsibility, you don't have to be concerned about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just butting because comment on Ryan's comment. You said 3 to 5% of revenue
Of
is
your
the
operating
guidance?
budget.
Okay, the guidance I've seen from the state is more like 10% is the guideline, not 3 to 5%.
No, 3 to 5.
Earlier, so I'm wondering what that 3
I
to
believe
5
from the DOR's website, it's 3 to 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
But our town has a policy in its, in the fiscal policy book that
Mhm.
says 10% or, it says retain 10% of the free cash of the operating budget, or no, of the general fund revenue, and that would be 610,438 should be retained in our finance committee as approved by the select board for those financial policies. And then the state also says that the stabilization should be 5% or greater, and that would be 305,219. That's not in our, I don't believe that's in our policy guide, but that is the state guide. So if you added up the resources and you took out the 610, we would have $1 million, 595, and 500. But some of that has to also stay in the stabilization, and that looks like it'd be around 305,000. So we'd be down at 1,200,000 that's in our various reserves, capital stabilization, and free cash, that we could think about what we want to retain there beyond the 10% and the 5%. But I do want some of this discussion to start off from the policy end and then work out from there.
Well, that was spoken like a
Jim,
true town clerk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, that was the most town clerk moment, because they always know every policy and bylaw and are able to share it at any given moment. So I appreciate that, because it's obvious that I was not aware that Shutesbury had their own voted policy for it, which is shouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, Jim.
We have been saying for years, we're going to fund free cash. We have been saying that we're going to be using that free cash to do this and do that and one thing or another, and it's just been growing and growing and growing. I thoroughly agree with Ryan. Now is the time to spend the free cash on these two projects, and then if reserves begin to run low, then we can consider borrowing. But to split up borrowing, you know, this year and the next year is a really, really bad idea. So we have the cash to pay for the culvert and probably the school roof between that and the other funds, and I think that's the way we ought to go. I think Ryan is absolutely correct on that.
Becky, and then Bob, and then Susie. Becky, are you still maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just double checking because I was just making sure it's still 2/3 vote on stabilization, because some of the regulations changed, but I think I just confirmed it is still 2/3 vote.
Hey, Bob.
I just want to say, I wanted to say two things. One, I don't know if this policy that Susie's referred to was voted on by me. I don't believe it ever was. One moment, please. I think that might have been a guideline that was provided by Joe Markarian, who's by the way, a former employee of the DOR. You know, as far as I'm concerned, we're the finance committee. We can make our own recommendations to town meeting. That's our job, is to represent the taxpayer and to represent the interest of the taxpayer. And I think that the interest of the taxpayer would be well served by us spending down these excessive, by any measure, including Joe Markarian's guidelines, is high. And we've been talking about these oncoming projects for years, and now they're here. So it's time to pony up, pay for them. The other thing I wanted to say was that the 112 that's in the budget this year that George mentioned as a providing for finance cost in our budget, that's another contribution to our reserves. And we made that last year. And I would like to see it taken out of the budget this year because our reserves are so high at the moment. So let's not forget that issue. That's another unnecessary item that's in our budget, which we could eliminate and take a little bit break, give the tax levy a little bit of a break, because that's a significant amount of money that does not have to be there. George disagrees with me, but I respectfully disagree with him.
Okay. Susie,
I also looked at our spending of free cash over the last 9 years and divided that number by 9. And we basically have been spending around $100,000 out of free cash each year for different expenses. We also spent money out of capital stabilization for a few different items specifically. So in that one, if we've only spent it 4 times or in 2 different years, and that we spent $338,000 out of capital stabilization. I don't know who we're arguing with. I don't hear people saying that we're not going to use free cash, but what I want to do is start off with saying, what kind of free cash do we need to retain? The select board voted that guidelines for municipal finances that Joe Markarian proposed. They approved that as a policy. And so I'm just saying we can start off with building those blocks. How much do we keep in free cash as recommended by the policy? How much do we keep in stabilization as recommended by the state? How much do we look at in terms of our last 9 years of spending of $100,000 out of free cash, just in the way we do business, and maybe keep knowing that that's a fluid amount that's going to go away. Maybe we keep something else there. And then we have a pile of reserve money, some in stabilization and some in free cash, that looks to be around 1.3 million, unless we want to take a little bit more out to save for our annual expenses done in free cash, which are 100,000.
George.
I just wanted to what Bob was saying earlier about the 2/3 and how these are big projects and 2/3 vote is really the proper way to do it. You know, I think if we want to spend some of the free cash, I would say we should pay for the roof with cash and go with it. I'm okay with the majority vote. I don't disagree with what Bob is saying, but I do think that the school roof has to be done. And it would be terrible if there was opposition to it. And I think I don't think there will be opposition to it, but I do think that it's a more appropriate way to use free cash than maybe the culvert. And maybe even the culvert, some of it should be, but I'm just recommending that we pay for the roof, the school roof, with free cash. By getting a majority vote, we guarantee a much better opportunity to get it approved. It brings free cash down by a lot. It's still higher than the reserve amount, probably by $200,000 to $300,000, but I'd say by $300,000. But with the second roof coming afterwards, I think we're going to need that, the free cash to be really high. So I would be against bringing free cash down to $700,000 in one shot, knowing that we've got these other big items, especially the roof on the elementary school, the remaining roof, because that's 30 years old or close to it. And as far as the culvert goes, I think we should use cash. I definitely think we should use either stabilization, maybe a little more free cash. Although I agree with Bob, I think the culvert one, we probably do want a 2/3 vote. But what would happen if the voters didn't approve it? I can't even imagine. And then
It would though, George, can you?
I'm sorry?
I can't imagine that it wouldn't pass. I just think it's the right way to go about our business.
You never know, Bob. I mean, we never know where opposition is going to come from. But that said, and then the final point I wanted to make was, it escaped me, but it is going to come back so quick. If we take the 100, back to Bob's final point about the transfer to stabilization. One of the reasons I like the idea of maybe borrowing for some of the culvert this year is we don't make that transfer to stabilization because we have debt service that we have to budget for. To me, if we take that 113 out of the budget, we take out the capacity to borrow in the future for anything that we need to borrow in the operating budget. We lose it for good. If we let that disappear, we're either going to have to add it back, and that's going to really hurt the taxpayers. All the savings from year 22 is going to be lost in 23 or 24. And if we hit the 25 limit, we won't have the ability to add it back, and we will no longer have the operating budget as an option to ever fund any debt, which I think would be absolutely horrible. No other town does things that way. We would be forced to go to debt exclusion overrides at that point for funding, and that would hurt the taxpayers in the long run. I believe even worse.
Can I just ask Susie a question? I just wanted to clarify. It's 10% and 5% of revenues, correct?
Of the general fund revenues, yep.
And was the stabilization, is that in reference to all stabilization, like capital and our standard stabilization, or is it specific?
I think that's just standard stabilization.
Yeah, I didn't see it separated. Oh, right. It was only in terms of general stabilization on the state information. And they talked about building your capital stabilization to meet these expenses.
Okay, because we don't even have 5% in our current stabilization.
What do you show? What is it?
5% is 305 and our current stabilization is 319.
Oh, I only have 285 down, so I might have that.
Okay.
I think that's last year's number.
Got you.
Yeah. Yeah, I see 318 or 319.
Okay. So my apologies.
And our capital stabilization's at 508.
Okay, that's what I have for capital. I don't know where.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, that was my only question.
Jim,
Yes, Ryan, do we lose access to free cash? Does free cash go into limbo at July 1st? In other words, every year, as I recall, it kind of disappears for a while until it's until it's certified by the DOR or whomever. So, is there a period of time where if we don't make a decision now and vote on something right now, that we're not going to have access to it until the fall of this coming year, or until the fall of 2021?
So right now you have 1.4 million in free cash to expend or vote to expend, but at the end of the fiscal year, it goes, I guess you could, yeah, the word is it goes away until free cash is certified again.
Uh-huh. All right, so we have to make a decision now, how we're going to spend this, and not wait until July 1st, after which point we won't have access to it. This is something we got to do now and get this settled now.
Well, by now, before then, just
before then.
I'm not saying you have to do it tonight, but
all
yes,
right, yeah, but
For town meeting.
yes,
Well, before the warrant article, right?
before the warrant would be printed.
before the warrant article, right?
Becky, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to apologize to Ryan because I gave him the 284 figure for stabilization, but that's what it was on December 31st of 2020.
No worries, I wasn't going to say, oh, I know I got that number from Becky.
Oh,
So you didn't need to apologize.
Well, she is your boss, right?
I was just like, I don't know where I got that. That's
The
I know
number,
we got it. But it's, I guess the posting of the interest happened later and that's the difference. So.
yeah, that's what we're seeing on the expense report.
Susie,
I feel like there's an argument that says don't put that capital stabilization in the operating budget, but the same people are arguing we have that money now in free cash and stabilization, let's spend it. So that's the point. I don't think there's a disagreement here about spending free cash and stabilization to meet some of these capital expenses. We're talking about how much to do, but we are in this situation for various reasons of gaining free cash. One is the annual program of saving for that. So I feel like that line item needs to stay in the operating budget, and we do need to spend some of the free cash, and we need to get down to some brass tacks. But I, again, want the policy of what we keep in reserves and understanding of what we use every year to be part of our decision tonight.
Mike,
While you're talking policy then, Susie, so the free cash policy, one of the bullets is to restrict the use of free cash to the extent possible and practical to one-time expenditures and to build or replenish the town's stabilization funds. So the policy is not to put that money from the budget into stabilization, but to transfer free cash to stabilization to build up the stabilization fund.
I was thinking, Ryan, it would be really nice for some of those scenarios you described earlier, with different types of borrowing, mixing some of these borrowing scenarios with cash stabilization. It'd be really nice if we could see these different scenarios and how it impacts the financial impact on the town for these different scenarios.
Okay, I can work with our borrowing expert on getting those for you. I had her draw up one for the million just to have that, like I said, but I'm glad I didn't have her do a lot because I wasn't even aware of the like 3 of the projects. So
but maybe given what you've picked up tonight on what would potential for the next couple of years, using that as a base, and then
it's
explore a few
definitely
different scenarios.
Yeah, I can work with her on something like that. I don't necessarily think it's my place, but just I am advising or recommending take money out of stabilization, etc. The way I view keeping that in your budget, if you were putting money away every time you got paid in your savings account to cover like your furnace breaking, and then your furnace broke, you wouldn't take all the money out of there and then stop contributing. You would take the money out and keep contributing, knowing that in a few years from now, your chimney might give or something. So you should always continue funding them. I don't think that we should stop funding them, but you fund them for when these things happen. So if you're funding them for when they happen and then you don't use the money, it's a waste completely. So that is why I'm recommending using some of the free cash, but I do think we should continue funding. The reason why we're in the position we're in is that the town has been conservative. I think there's a little more in there than should be personally, but the town does a good job and we're able to cover these costs that pop up. As you can see, a year ago, we didn't have any concerns about borrowing for funds at all. And now a year later, we're looking at over 2 million in 2 years.
Jim?
Yeah, George.
A real quick question, Ryan. You said you were prepared for $1 million. Do you know what the annual debt service on $1 million would be? I come up with about 227.
That's correct. And then obviously it drops down from there. So 227 on the high side, going down about 5,000 a year from there until you're got to pay it off.
Okay. So if we funded $500,000, that would be at roughly the amount that we're transferring to the capital stabilization.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. That's all. I just wanted to get that out there for everyone.
Yeah. So right now, someone did mention earlier, I do like the idea of school roof for 260 from free cash and paying the culvert with free cash. I do find that appealing. So I will forgive me, I'm not great with names. So Jim, I will get some quotes just to help get a better idea for everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh.
I think Bob was next.
Yeah, Jim.
And then maybe Susie and then Becky.
I just wonder whether we're ready for the committee to entertain any motions on these matters tonight or right now, because I'd be willing to make a motion that we pay for the school roof out of free cash in this town meeting. Is that something that we'd be willing to look to talk about or vote on?
I would agree with that.
Was that a motion, Bob?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll make a motion. We pay for the school roof project from free cash this year in this budget.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Does the motion have to specify up to a dollar amount or?
I think it's $260,000. Is that fair, Becky?
That's what's been estimated. We'll know by hopefully May 26th if it holds up.
Okay, so we can alter that number before the article is printed.
No, I thought 18th was the deadline for printing.
for getting everything in, but we can decide if we, that could be potentially amended. But
Could
we're
be.
not gonna have a better figure before we have to go to print.
Well, Becky,
But
what
it
could
can
it
be
be?
made and it can be amended on town meeting floor.
Okay, good.
All right.
So I make an amendment, I make a motion that we approve $260,000 from free cash in this budget. Becky,
Okay, you can amend, but you can only amend to go down. You can't amend to go up.
Make it
Did we
three,
raise the dollar?
make it 300,000
Yeah,
in free cash. And then it can go down.
I will make a motion that we allocate $300,000 or less to the school roof project for fiscal year 220, funded
From free
from
cash.
cash.
I'll second it.
You're getting good at that, Bob.
Yeah, I'm refining my language here.
Becky, did you have your hand up?
What was that?
Did you have your hand up?
Oh, but I have to wait till after the motion because I just had another question for Ryan about financing that I wanted to ask. But I'll wait till the motion's done.
It's been
Okay.
seconded.
Any further discussion on the motion? We go ahead and vote.
Arvinatis, aye.
RTR, I.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye. Okay, Becky,
Ryan, I just wondered if you could tell us what your needs are for cash flow from free cash, because I know Gabe used to make a big deal and have, I think she wanted it kept at about 750,000 because of the issues she had at the beginning of the quarters when she had to pay the regional school on the first of the month.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to have $500,000 in there. I haven't had any cash flow issues in the time that I've been here. There was maybe one time where I was like, this is kind of iffy, but all I had to do was wire funds from another bank. So I know that obviously it's in there, but the cash flow has been good in Shutesbury. And that's considering that we had a pandemic that also allowed for a lot of people to not necessarily have to pay taxes on time. So I would be comfortable with 500 to 600 in there, which I think puts us at the 10%, which if the policy exists, I'm not one to argue with it. There was a reason why someone put it in there at some point in time. And unless there's a real study as to explain why they did that, I don't know why. I wouldn't try to argue the policy that exists.
okay, Susie,
Mike had some confusion on the things he quoted. They're in our book on page 10 and 11, explains what the policies were for free cash and stabilization. I'm not going to go through it right now, but it's there and it was approved. So, and the state also talks about putting money into voting money into capital stabilization as a process of saving up. But there's one other factor that the state talks about, or actually it's in both, is that a town that carries 10% in debt is a town that shows it's investing in its capital needs and it's not letting itself get too far behind. They both say that. And so there is a role for holding debt in a town as a fiscal plan that's sound. And right now, I think the only debt we hold is the broadband debt, and that
$1 million.
they are working at reducing that debt, and they have a subscription rates to help pay for it. So understanding these principles that are in documents that help guide us, because we are volunteers and we haven't been doing this forever. I feel it's important to recognize those factors and try to institute an understanding. So I'm glad we got through one vote, but I still think we need to keep clear of what direction we're headed in, and what we leave, what we use out of capital stabilization, and how much free cash we save, and why that 10% is a useful factor. And then I am trying to understand the $100,000 of free cash that we've been spending per year for different obvious expenses that we're all okay with, and town has voted to support them. So there has to be some spending reserve that is in the free cash number.
I think Mike, I think your hand was next.
Yeah, Susie, I was reading off of page 10 also when I made that statement, but back when Joe Markarian was working with the town to come up with this financial policy, I was on the select board at that time. I attended some of the first meetings with Joe Markarian and the other people that were on the committee. And the initial conversations were, you know, how should we set up these policies? What's the best way to do this? And Joe Markarian's bottom line was, well, it's whatever the town feels like they think they need. There's nothing set in stone. It's just whatever the town wants to do. So when there's guidelines from the state that say 3 to 5%, you know, in free cash or whatever, you know, that's great. That's a guideline. Shutesbury has decided to up that to 10%. Maybe now's the time to look at that. Maybe there's no need to have it that high. And with that, the way it is though, I'm not sure, Susie, what your point is of why we are keeping those numbers so high. I mean, Ryan has said that he doesn't have a cash flow problem. $500,000 works fine for him. And I don't hear from any other finance committee members as to why they think that those numbers need to be where they are. So, you know, I'm kind of just kind of lost at this point, not understanding why we're doing things the way we're doing. And I'd certainly like to have some edification on that.
I think Bob had his hand up, and then George, and then Susie.
Yeah, I was going to ask Ryan, you know, for clarification, since I've been on the finance committee, which I don't know, but it's probably been about 4 years or so. George, many more years than me. I've never noticed any time when free cash was used for our general accounts. When I don't imagine if the treasurer needed to spend money to make his regular payments, he's got a fairly stable revenue stream that comes into the bank. I don't even I can't see a situation where you'd be asking us to transfer free cash for your ordinary spending.
Not how it
That's
works.
not what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, because you have to think you have to think of the budget as an accounting concept, whereas what I deal is the actual money in the bank that's liquid at all times. So if that can be drastically reduced if we spend a large cash fund. So when you have like quarterly tax dues come in and they're not coming in at the same time as like large, like what's an example, like a school payment where we have to give them like $500,000+, we have to make sure that we have readily available just in the bank, not what we're spending in our general ledgers, because that doesn't really mean anything to me. That's Gail. But I have to make sure that just the checking in the money market has that money just sitting there. Not like what we have in stabilization, because I can't just pull from stabilization. Those funds they're invested in the market in some capacity. Some of them are tied up for long-term, short-term, you know, based on what Mass General allows. So it's just a matter of making sure that we do have a safe cash flow at all times. And to speak to Mike's point, yeah, 500,000, I'm comfortable knowing it's there. I will say that the 10%, the 610,000 is a number I'm comfortable with. I'm a conservative by nature in my spending habits and approach. And I do like that more. My recommendation of spending down your free cash earlier was not to bring it down to zero, because that would make me uncomfortable. I'd like a safe cushion. I just think we're past the safe cushion.
I just wanted to say, if you wanted some money in the bank to spend as a treasurer, you can't touch free cash. And that's under control of the authority. You can't, it's not available to you.
Right, but I don't touch general ledgers. I don't touch free cash. I don't touch line items. I just touch what's liquid and funds available. That would be Gail, the accountant, who wouldn't be allowed to move money out, essentially. Yeah.
Because so Ryan, if it's general funds, it's free cash, it's mixed in with the general fund. That's why you have enough cash in there for the cash flow. So
Exactly.
apples and oranges here. It's just money sitting in the bank account that's available for working capital to help us with the daily cash flow. It's at the end of the day, the accounting will all show that the funds were spent the way they were approved.
Right. And it is not, I am also the treasurer for a school district that does not have great cash flow. And it is challenging. There was a time last year where we were, I mean, days away from not making payroll because the cash flow just isn't good. And that isn't a feeling you want in the town. It's just not.
And in Shutesbury, you could borrow for that, right? And that would cost us interest.
Yeah, you could go out. So that'd be a perfect example of like a band, the one you're borrowing. So we could go out, borrow, be like, you know what, we anticipate having this revenue coming in at quarter taxes. That's what the A in band stands for, bond anticipation. And we could use that to fund it. But, you know, it's going to cost us money and interest. It costs you time and effort on my part. We have to pay an advisor to do the paperwork. It's just not worth it to operate that way.
My point about the interest, my point about the borrowing for the short-term cash needs is we do fund interest expense, short-term interest expense in the budget, I think $2,000 or $3,000. So that's why I mentioned that. Anyways.
Maybe you can help me understand. I'm not getting this. Like, if we were to dip into our reserves for an efficiency in our spending, we would have to go through a process to transfer that money out of these reserve accounts.
Well, I think, but when you're looking at the bank accounts, the actual bank accounts that we have, I think we have a general bank account that just has a lot of money in it.
Yeah, right.
It has the revenues that we collect from the taxpayers. It also has the free cash. So having the free cash sitting in the bank account gives Ryan the flexibility to write checks at different points in time that he wouldn't have if free cash was zero. Because then the revenue might be 500,000, but the regional tax bill might be 300,000, but the regional bill for the school might be 350 this quarter. So he'd have a $50,000 problem if free cash is zero. But if free cash is 500,000, he's got not 300, but 800,000 sitting in there. And so he could write that check. And he knows that the revenue is going to come in and replenish the free cash. So that's just, you know, that's a cash flow. That's a cash management treasury issue, not a budgeting. And the state law gives him that flexibility. It's my understanding. Is the state gives him that flexibility because he has a general bank account, just like you have a checking account, and you might write checks for something you knew you weren't going to, you know, but you know other money's coming in. Anyways, just allows him to manage cash flow.
Right.
That's
I understand. I get it. Thank you.
Susie. Oh, George, do you still have a thought there?
Yeah, I never got to my real question. I was just trying to add a little perspective to this, but quite honestly, I can't remember. Oh, so Mike's point where he was asking Susie, I did also agree with Susie, and I did say it earlier, why we think that the free cash at this point in time should not be down to 500 or 600. I did address that. And I do believe that with all these other things coming down the road, a cruiser, and we know we're going to have to take care of the roof at the elementary school. Now is not the time to drain free cash. I think we're going to be using more of it in the subsequent years. And I just want to make the point that we need to think about some flexibility going into fiscal 23's capital spending. So that's just what I wanted to say. Okay. And I agree with Susie, and I did also give that point. So I wanted to reiterate it for Michael.
Yeah. Susie, and then Becky.
So what I would like to do is, if there's going to be a discussion about the guidelines that the town already approved, I'd like to move that into the summer when we're doing our long range planning in July. That's on our schedule. If we're going to change horses here, I'd like to have that discussion separate from tonight, because we still have some budgeting issues to settle for FY22. And in that summer discussion, we can think about some of the guidelines the state offers us or explains to us about 10% carrying 10% debt, and we can look at that. What I'd like to think about right in the moment is we know how the roof is going to get paid. Now we have the culvert cost, and there was some discussion about if it came out of capital stabilization, which currently has 508,000. And that's about the amount that is needed for the culvert. That would flatten that, but we continue to put an allocation in our operating budget to build it back up. And one other piece about our reserve, our reserves, part of them was built on the money we got back from saving to cover the environmental costs at the fire station. So it's not like we just magically that we're building those so intentionally. Sometimes money gets there from another place that's probably not likely to be repeated. And I think that was over 200,000 for the fire station remediation money. So it's not, so that would be something we would think about a little bit more when we look in the summer about where the money comes in and where it goes out and what to save for those for capital costs.
Becky, I think Becky was next and then Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that in the last couple of years, we've been tightening up. The health insurance line is very tight. Probably going to have to ask for a transfer to fund it this year. Maybe we'll squeeze through. And some other major lines we have been cutting into, and we're not anymore in a number of areas that we had been in the past. The reason free cash was generated at a healthy level again this year was because of the specific one-time transfers that the Finance Committee made at the end of last year. Those are, for the most part, all of those are gone now. So you will be looking at a more constricted revenue compared to what you had been seeing 5 years ago. And I just want to point that out, as and we'll be seeing it when free cash is certified. We should probably be seeing that start to occur this year. So I just wanted to put that out there, that you've been making decisions year after year to help control and make sure free cash doesn't get larger. But a number of those things you did were one time and you can't do every year. So you should see less money flowing into free cash.
Jim.
Free cash, everybody seems to be forgetting that free cash goes into limbo on July 1st. And so talking about it during the summer isn't going to do us much good because we can't do anything about it during the summer. So what I think we ought to do is to take a chunk of free cash and put it into the culvert account, since we seemed all to agree that that we should use free cash to help pay for the culvert project, which is going to be supposedly done this summer and it's going to cost us a ton of money. So why not come up with a number and move the money from free cash into the into the culvert account, which already has some already in it, and then we can deal with that. I think Brian was in favor of that when he first started talking about all of this some time ago.
AJ, and then Susie, and then Bob.
So 2 points. One is I think the suggestion that we have a discussion in the summer about free cash was about not a funding discussion, but it was a policy discussion about whether we wanted to revisit the policy that Shutesbury has for what proportion of our operating budget should be in reserve. So I think that's the right time to have that discussion because there's a lot on our plate right now. I think, Jim, to address your suggestion that we tackle a specific or take a specific number right now or discuss a specific number, I'm wondering what people think about a proposal to essentially use reserves to fund half of the culvert project and borrow the other half. Is that what do folks have sort of a reaction to that scenario? Does that strike some as a kind of reasonable compromise in terms of the different arguments that have been discussed tonight?
There's a lot. I think Susie, you were next. There's a couple of, and then I say George and Bob.
So I can pass because AJ summed up some of those and we
Yeah,
can.
I
move
just
on.
want to say, first of all, that none of us, including myself, is proposing that we lead the free cash down to zero or anything close to that. I disagree with this idea that we should keep it 10%. I think the 3 to 5% recommendation of DOR is fine. That's what I support. So yes, I do support us having ample free cash according to that measure. And I also think that, we have historically seen our reserves grow every year. Not just last year, but every year. And last year we put 256,000, was it, out of free cash against the levy. And we still saw our free cash pretty much go up. And that was partly due to some of the 30 accounts that we clawed back, but it was also due to the fact that we funded that $112,000 and we got a reduction in our assessment at the region and some other things. But really, we all have to understand we have very high reserves. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with getting them down to a reasonable level and still protecting the treasurer and keeping things responsible and conservative. So I propose that we pay through a combination of free cash and capital stabilization or capital accounts for the culvert projects in this year's budget. And then down the road, if we have to borrow, we can borrow. We have excellent credit. And we raise this money to spend it on these things. So let's go. Let's spend it.
George,
Well, I was gonna say, I like AJ's idea. I'm not sure 50-50, but I do think that interest rates are probably as low as we're ever gonna see them. And I have an issue about keeping the capacity in the operating budget for that. We can save some stabilization money by not making the stabilization transfer next year, put the debt service in there in its place, and it'll give us a little more flexibility in fiscal 23 when we're facing those other items. I was thinking not 50%, but I was thinking something like 250 or 300,000. Only because if we did 300,000 out of cash, and I'm not saying which one, then we'd have to borrow 450, right, of the 750. Debt service annually for that is $102,000. That would fit in our budget. In fact, if we went with $250,000 down, $500,000 borrowing, that's $113,750. That's basically our transfer each year to the stabilization, and that still leaves us with about $577,000 in stabilization, which we are definitely going to need again. And the free cash is probably still a little higher than a lot of people think. And and I would even agree 100, not 1,000 is probably still a little high. But I think that at the end of when we approve FY23 next year, all these cash reserves are going to be much, much lower. So I don't object to keeping a little of that cash handy to give us some flexibility.
So what I'm kind of hearing, and just from my breakdown of the numbers, I think it's already been voted that your preference is to take $260,000 out of free cash to cover the gym roof. If you took another $400,000 out of free cash, we would need to borrow $550,000, which basically puts the payment in a range that's been comfortable in the budget. And that still leaves around $700 something thousand in free cash. And that's not touching stabilization at all, which we most likely will need to touch next year anyway.
Ryan, quick question. Those numbers didn't make sense to me. Culvert's 1.1 million. We got a 350 grant, which is 750. You're saying borrow 400,000, then we would, use free cash of 400,000. So we would only need to borrow 350.
I think he's including the HVAC.
Oh, I included the HVAC in the event that we need the 200 for that.
Oh,
Okay,
Because
right.
if we don't, well, then it's money just that we leave in free cash, which isn't bad.
Okay.
and we can only handle one project at a time.
Well, that's why I gave up on the pad of paper, switch to the spreadsheet.
We're
Ryan,
hopeful that the
just to clarify, Ryan, that scenario that you just laid out for us, is that something that is that a scenario that you're recommending at this point?
I actually really do like the idea personally, but it's me trying to listen. It's not my job to sit here and just do whatever I want. I mean, when it comes to borrowing, the treasurer does make treasurer that they have the decision-making authority in that capacity, but the whole point of all of this always is group effort. You know, we're all trusted by the citizens in some capacity to make a decision with one another. I do think that makes sense. I think it leaves a decent buffer in your free cash. It's well above the 10%, but at the same time, I do believe if I don't think it's unhealthy to be budgeting for debt and paying a debt payment. I don't think it's unhealthy to keep those things in your budget. I think I believe that in my personal job in the banking industry. It's if someone has debt, they pay it off. We'll keep that in your budget. Either you're putting towards a savings, you're paying it out towards another debt. Like you should continue those patterns that are healthy. Becky? Oh, I'm sorry. I always forget because I'm the chair of the select board, and every time I'm in a meeting, I just start to call on people.
Yeah, but Ryan, you did it really well.
I'm so sorry.
Ryan, could you just go over the numbers again? What you recommended, how much to borrow and how much out of free cash or stabilization?
Oh, to 660 total out of free cash and 550 borrowed, I believe. Let me double check.
Okay.
Because I've been trying not to use my adding machine because it's loud. Yeah, that's correct.
So the 660 includes the school roof. So 660 out of reserves for the school roof and part of the culvert. And HVAC is 550 for the balance to borrow.
Yes.
Culvert balance and culvert balance.
I guess technically you could say you're paying the HVAC and the gym roof out of free cash, and a portion of the culvert and the remaining balance of culvert is borrowed. If you wanted to think of it in some type of breakdown like that.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, number one, we are talking about separate projects. We just voted on one project. That's a done deal.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just leave that aside. The HVAC thing is something that's another, that's a dynamic involved in that. We don't know where the funding may or may not be coming from. We shouldn't conflate that with the other project, which is the culvert. So I recommend that we just vote on the culvert. We sort out what we want to approve, where the money's coming from, and get that out of the way. And then the HVAC, I don't know what the rest of you think, but I'd like to see what comes down from the state and what Becky can provide us with information about where the money's coming before we vote it in our budget. If we can get that information, we'll have that information as a basis for a good decision.
Yeah. George?
I hear what Bob's saying. I think it makes sense. I would say that it's one of the reasons why I want to leave a little more money in cash is because we don't know what the HVAC is going to end up being. And I would think that, you know, if we end up having to pay a fair amount of money for it, we might want to use free cash for that. It's another project that I think we really are going to need to do. And I just don't want to take away that flexibility. I agree. We should talk about the culvert and only the culvert at this point. And the HVAC, we can talk about it again, but for me, I just want to make sure we have the flexibility for the HVAC after we figure out how to fund the culvert. So I want to ask everybody to consider that when talking about the culvert.
Yeah, George, just you speak closer to your sound piece because sometimes you break up when you're talking.
Okay, all right, thank you, I will.
All right. Susie?
So I'm wondering if we're ready for a motion, because they'll be following a discussion. A discussion will follow, but it sounds like I would like to propose, make a motion to get 400,000 out of capital stabilization for the culvert and borrow 350,000 for the culvert. Is there a second?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because we talked a lot about, you said you put 400,000 from capital stabilization, but we also talked about using free cash for that 400,000.
I figured that's part of the discussion, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's not 400 in the capital stabilization, just for your information.
I have about 500 in capital stabilization.
Yeah, there's 507.
Yeah. You're mixing
back.
up. That's the stabilization is only 300, George, not capital. Capital has more.
All right, my bad. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
The numbers I have are capital stabilization 319,088 and stabilization 679,484. 8 or 4. Is that
Yeah,
right?
let-
That came from the expense report.
No, that's wrong.
Yeah,
That was
capital,
tonight's expense report.
capital
Yeah,
stabilization.
that's where I got my numbers. Yes.
Its
I took
capital
those off the expense
stabilization
report.
is 507.
Yeah,
Really?
but
Okay,
rounded
well,
off,
it's in the expense report, so.
rounded off, I was calling it 508.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah,
And
I see.
508.
No, I had them backwards. No,
Yeah.
you're both. Yep, that was my fault. Sorry.
So what are the correct numbers?
Can that motion get seconded and then open to discussion so we can narrow our discussion?
I'll second it.
More discussion.
Can someone tell me what the numbers are for the capital?
Yeah, capital stabilization is 508. Stabilization's 318.
Okay.
In response to Susie's question, what do we think? I think 400 is too much. I don't want to take that much out of cash this year, only because of what we're looking at in the subsequent years.
She does, Joyce, she doesn't have it. Her motion is out of capital stabilization, not cash.
Okay, well, funding with cash, yes, using
Okay.
capital stabilization, it's the $400,000 with cash. I'm thinking we should use a little less and pay a little more on the debt service side. That's all, because we can put 250 down, which would require borrowing 500, and that would bring our debt service to what we have currently available in the operating budget. So that's more what I'm interested in doing for everybody else. I'm not, that's my response.
Okay, Bob and then Jim?
Yeah, I just want to say, George, just because we have this amount, 112 in our budget, which I basically oppose, doesn't mean we have to match it up with a certain amount of borrowing. I mean, that's a rather arbitrary way to do business. I think we should pay cash for this. We have the money. And we should eliminate that 112 in the budget this year.
We're not going.
I just want to say it's not arbitrary. It's the capacity we have. And interest rates are as low as they will ever be. And I think we're going to need cash for the future. So those are the reasons why I'm making this.
I understand, George. My view is that we have the capacity to pay cash for this too. And that's something let's not forget that. And I don't really personally, and we have personal styles of financial styles, I'm sure, but I'm never really interested in borrowing money when I have the cash to handle a purchase. And, many times people have told me, like car dealers, when I bought a truck last year, you'd be better off buying this on time. You'll be way ahead. And I guess I just not smart enough to understand that. I just like paying for things, saving up for them and paying for things. And we're in a good position to do that.
Well, the one thing I would say to that, Bob, is if we pay with stabilization, then we have this 113 in the budget that we're going to transfer to stabilization. At the end of the day, what's the difference? To me, we might as well, we're going to have to borrow, I believe, for one of these items, whether it's this year or next year. I would prefer to lock into lower interest rates now.
Yeah, I think there was Jim and then Becky and then Susie.
There's no guarantee that the interest rates that are the way they are right now are going to be higher or lower next year. None of us are gurus. We don't know. We frankly don't go. We've got the cash. We should spend the cash first, and then if we need to borrow it, we can borrow it. I think that's a regimen that Shutesbury voters are going to understand very, very clearly. And I think that's the way we ought to go.
Okay, Becky and then Susie.
Pass.
Susie.
So I don't think that anybody is bringing a new idea here. We have a motion on the floor. If George wants to offer the amendment that the balance is changed into 250 from cash reserves, and I'm saying capital stabilization, and 500 for debt, I don't think there's just any new opinion. So everybody gets a vote. That's great. Everybody gets to raise their hand at the right time, but I'd like this motion to move forward because I don't think we're going to have any more revelations.
I would like to make a motion to modify Susie's motion from 400,000 from cash reserves to 250,000 from cash reserves.
And then from borrowing, would you move that from 350 to 5?
Yes.
That'd be part of your motion also?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And by cash reserves, you mean specifically capital
Capital
stabilization?
stabilization that is in Susie's motion, yes.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Wow, we're all discussed out.
Justin,
Do we want to have a vote?
Overnight, aye.
Chair, I.
Groves, nay.
Hemingway, nay.
Cashew, yes.
Closure, aye.
Walton, I.
So that's 5 yeses and 2 noes? Is that,
Yes.
did I get that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And just, I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up on the notes here. So the amendment is we're allocating up to it was
250 from capital
250
stabilization.
Right, of capital stabilization funds, the remaining 550K to be borrowed.
I just have 500 even.
Yeah, just
Sorry,
500.
500. Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
got that done.
Yep. George,
Yeah, one thing we didn't ask, and I apologize, I should have asked earlier of Ryan, is do we know in fiscal 22 if we will have full debt service or it'll be partial debt service because of the timing of the borrowing?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can find out.
Because we may not need to budget in FY22 the full 100 and whatever it might be, 15,000. Let's just throw that out for simplicity.
Let's see. No, you wouldn't have to make a pay. So say you did it now, you'd make a payment. No, you would make a payment in August of 22, which would be FY. What is that, FY23?
Well, that's not, we wouldn't even have to budget for debts for the principal if that was the case.
Right. That's what my estimation is that she drew up for the first million is we wouldn't have to do anything until August of 22, which would be FY23, right? Yeah.
So then we don't really need to budget for this in FY22 at all?
Doesn't look like it. I can confirm that, but that's,
So if we did the project this summer, where would the money come from? To pay off the contractor? You borrow the money. And so the money wouldn't be due to the following fiscal year. Is that what you're saying, Ryan?
correct.
Okay.
That's normal.
Yeah, we would spend the 350 grant, we would spend the 250 cash, and the $500,000, the first payment wouldn't be till August of 20.
okay. Other beyond this, Melody,
I just have a question in terms of the borrowing. Maybe this is not the time and place, so just tell me to shut up, but how does that actually work? I mean, is that going to happen soon? I mean, George, you talked about jumping on these low interest rates. Is that going to happen like in the next month, the next 6 months? What's the timeline?
Town has
When we expend the funds, right?
Yeah.
So is it
So
the town meeting or what's the?
once it's voted, so when, I don't know when the warrant is being placed, but as soon as we have this approved, so at the end, you can't make these, we get to make the decisions, but at the end of the day, taxpayers have all decisions always. So they will vote it, they will give us the A-OK, and then after the meeting, I'll immediately start planning to go out to bid. And all we do, basically all that happens, it's the opposite. When you need a loan, you go to the bank and they tell you what your rate is. When a town needs money, we say to the banks, we need $500,000. Who wants to give us the best rate? And they just send the rates to me, and whoever by statute has the lowest rate automatically gets it.
Sorry for the naive questions. I just don't know these things.
It's not a naive question at all.
Yeah, it's a good question. And so Ryan, you're saying that even before we have to borrow, we would have a locked-in rate.
Yeah, I can
Because
do
the
it as soon as we
competitive
have the approval. Yeah, because you can have towns. We just did this. We voted a school a roof repair in Orange like 10 years ago, and we never used the money. So we just put it back in. We ended up destroying the whole building. So we just put it back in, and we're using it for something else. With town's vote, of course.
Running out of juice.
Well, I think we might have used up all the questions we may have for Ryan tonight. Or are we moving on to another agenda item? Jim?
Yeah, I just think we still have we've nailed 2 projects, at least for purposes of our group here tonight. Is there any further need to discuss next direction on these other projects? For example, the school?
I think I agree with Bob that we can revisit the HVAC when we have some more information about what the actual costs of that project are going to be and whether it's going to be an eligible expense under the American Rescue Act.
Yeah, what's the feeling, Becky, and when we might have an idea on that, what direction that will go?
Next week, they promise guidance should be coming out on Monday, May 10th, and hopefully it'll start to leak out by Friday.
By this Friday.
Sometimes it leaks out early, but by Monday, Tuesday, we should have some guidance.
Okay, because we do plan to meet next Tuesday, so we might be able to, maybe next Tuesday, we'll have enough information to make a decision on how to go forward with the HVAC. Right.
Except we don't have the HVAC number. We can use a guesstimate, but we won't have until that May 17th is when capital planning is going to meet again and hopefully have some more information.
Okay. So George and Jim?
I think Jim was first.
Jim and then George.
Yeah, the likelihood that we're going to get money from, the CARES Act is actually pretty good because a lot of this repair is going to be done to improve the ventilation system in the building, which is now locked on full bore, so to speak. It was jury rigged that way in order to meet the COVID specifications for the amount of time that air needs to be turned over inside the school. So, I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to pitch most of a good chunk of the cost of this for right at the CARES Act. I think that we're probably in pretty good shape on that, and we should be able to get at least half of it from the the U.S. federal government. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. We're talking about the American Rescue Plan, right? Not the CARES Act.
Right.
Well,
Well, in the American, because we're looking at $500,000 from the American Rescue Plan.
No, I was talking about the money actually that, that Becky now, the earlier chunk of money, which was for masks and God knows what else, which we still have a lot of. Becky, don't we have quite a bit of that yet to spend?
No, we have about $20,000.
20,000?
Yeah, we had 150 and it could be 20 or 30. It's still a little nebulous. There's still open bills out there. But the bulk of that money is spent.
Well, Jim, and what I was going to say, Jim, is I still share your optimism because the American Rescue Funds, that's $500,000. I looked quickly at the list of acceptable items, and an HVAC system is certainly one of them.
In
fact, when I look at it, I don't know if there's a whole lot more. I mean, our annual town meeting and our tents and that kind of thing, but to spend $500,000, I'm happy about this being 200,000. I'm hopeful that we can really push to make this acceptable for the American Rescue Plan, because otherwise we're just not going to be able to spend the $500,000.
I know. I was thinking exactly the same thing. We have it's almost too much money for us to spend. We just don't have the money, to have the projects that really line up with with what it is that you've been reading about.
Yeah, their list is pretty restrictive from what I saw.
Very restrictive. Yeah. And these are also projects that have to be initiated now. And if they're old projects, forget it. There's a whole timeline. It comes in sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so, fortunately, we haven't. This is a new project, and we can apply for it. If it was a really old project, we'd be in trouble at this point.
Bob, and then Susie, and then Becky.
There's a very good possibility that we could put together proposal that, well, let's back up for a second. We have two proposals, two estimates from two contractors to address the issue of the controls, which also control and contribute to the ventilation system that exists in the school presently. That should be something that we could argue with an application that we should be subsidized or supported by the federal grants that are coming down, the 500 grand. But in addition to that, I hope that we can put together at least an idea or a rough kind of proposal to provide a whole building ventilation, which is a different thing, which the school building does not presently have, but would be a major improvement to the building and to the HVAC system, and would certainly be a good thing for us to get for nothing. So if we can make that proposal and we can make the school ventilation system more efficient and more healthy and have it subsidized by federal monies, that would be all to the good, and it would be a way for us to access more of that money than we might otherwise. So that's one of the things we're going to try to work towards. Becky knows about this, and we're going to try to at least rough out some ideas about adding that dimension to the present HVAC system, particularly when we can possibly access federal money to do it. So that's something we're going to try. We're going to try to do, and I think that'd be a good thing for the town to get, and be a way for us to access more of that money.
Susie and then Becky.
So I feel like we're looking at good news, but we're speculating about things we don't have much more information about. And we're like waiting till Monday, May 10th. And even then we may or may not get enough information. And I think that after that, if we have to plan for something else, we can strategize about how to meet that expense if the American Rescue Plan doesn't work for us. But I don't think there's much more use in speculating now until we get some more information.
Becky.
I am wondering if it's okay for Ryan to sign off at this point. I'm a little protective of his hours since we just had to increase them because his average is so high already. And I really appreciate all the time he's given us and hope he will do it again before this, potentially before this, well, within the next year for sure.
Yeah.
Anytime you need me, don't hesitate ever to reach out. I'm usually just sitting at this desk anyway. I'm not gonna lie, I multitasked a little tonight, so.
Okay, well, I think we can, I think if we're done with the capital discussion, then we can let Ryan go.
Thank you.
So if we're all good with that, Ryan, we very much appreciate you taking the time tonight and walking us through these various scenarios. Much appreciated.
I appreciate being invited and being a part of your dialogue. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and stay safe.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Good night.
I know.
Mike.
Yeah, I was just wondering with, after all the different programs that have been funded out here and everything like that, there's still like $1.1 million in free cash. And based on what Jim said and Ryan, we're on July 1st until sometime in the fall, free cash kind of gets frozen. Does the finance committee want to do a transfer of some of that free cash into stabilization, just in preparation for projects that may be coming up this fall that would require a special town meeting, something like that?
Yeah, anybody want to comment? Jim.
Well, that's why I said put the money into the Loxpond Road culvert account. There's an account sitting there. It has some $400,000 in it now, and we should move some free cash into that account so that it'll be available once this project starts rolling this summer.
Make a motion.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Bob, do you want to make a
Yeah,
motion?
let's make a motion. How much can we move?
Well, we're at $1.1 million right now on the books. Is that what our estimate is after the transfers? So what do we want our balance to be? 600, what Ryan said, 600. So let's say we move everything but 600 over to capital reserves.
So that's what, 500?
Yeah.
500, okay.
Okay, I think, George, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, we're just talking about moving money from reserves, not to a culvert account,
Well,
right?
well, there is a
Because we've
call.
already voted on the culvert. The culvert is done. We're just talking about moving
Yeah,
funds
moving money to reserves, right.
to stabilization from free cash. I just want
Oh,
to be clear
all
on
right,
that.
all right. Well, then over to stabilization.
Oh, that's my motion, unless Susie wants to talk first.
Well, no, somebody can second it, then I'll go into the discussion part.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, we move it $500,000 from free cash into stabilization.
Second,
Susie, you want to?
We have also spent an average of 100,000 out of free cash to cover other expenses that they're not incidental. I don't even know what you call them. And they're all listed in that chart we have of spending for the capital plan over the last 9 years. So I feel like the number that we reserve in free cash that we don't put aside in stabilization should be the 10% that's policy plus another 100,000 that we may end up spending, because we haven't yet talked about the possibility of funding some lines in the operating budget out of free cash. And we were going to talk about that. I don't know if it's the agenda, if there's an agenda item for that or not, but so I could see it being more like 700,000 reserved in free cash and then moving some into capital stabilization.
So you're suggesting moving more like 300,000 to 400,000
Yeah,
versus the motion on the floor is 500?
yeah.
No. Okay. George?
Yeah, I think 500 is just too much. I think for the reasons that Susie said, also we do have in our budget 113,000 going to stabilization, so we know it's going to increase by that amount or whatever it is, 112.5, I think. And I'm just concerned about having flexibility for the next year or two. I just think I'll vote for the concept, but I wouldn't necessarily vote for $500,000. I think it should be much lower, 200 or 300, just to give ourselves flexibility going into the next fiscal year. That's it.
George, just so I understand you, what do you mean by flexibility in that regard?
Well, we don't, like Susie said, there are other things that come along, like the cruiser. We're probably going to we might pay for the cruiser with $50,000 in free cash. And other unexpected items. Personally, I think the 10% is a good number. And our budget is close to 6.7 million. So to me, I wouldn't want free cash to go below 700,000. And after the 260 transfer, I got it 1.1. So 500,000 is going to put us at 600. To me, that's just too low. I personally think it should be 800.
Melody?
Yeah, again, just a question, perhaps naive, but we're talking about the cruiser. Has that already been approved, or is that something? So you're just talking about it, George, as if like it needs to be there in case we approve it. But do we always approve whatever the police ask for? I mean, I'm just trying to put my head around this. Is this a foregone conclusion, or
When
understand.
when I say that, my experience has been that cruisers last about 3 years. And so we are always replacing a cruiser every 3 years. Even if we didn't approve it for FY23, it's inevitable that we will have to pay for another cruiser.
And it's on the capital plan. I mean, it's on the long-term capital plan document.
Yeah,
Right.
cruisers just don't have long lives. And the other thing I wanted to say about that was, it'll come back to me. There was another point I wanted to make about that, but the cruisers, inevitably, we're always buying one every 3 years. There was another point I want to make about that, but
George, if I may, the cruiser could be paid for from the capital reserves.
yes,
Or it should be paid for. It shouldn't be paid for out of free cash. It should be, if it's approved by capital planning or recommended by capital planning and also recommended by FinCom, it could very easily and very, I think logically come out of a capital account. And then town meeting would approve it in all likelihood if it went through that process. So I don't see why we're talking about the cruiser and free cash together.
I don't necessarily agree. I mean, why not pay for the cruiser with free cash? I don't know. I don't know that it's our policy that everything we buy has to be out of this capital stabilization, but that's just.
Again, I made the point earlier tonight, George, that we should have 2/3 vote, majority vote for significant spending. I think that's a proper way to go with significant spending. Cruiser is kind of marginal in that regard, but it's still 50 grand is a lot of money. It's not like 5,000 for a garage door opener.
Yeah, to me, it's not a lot of money, not in the context of a business, a $7 million business. That's all. That to me, it's not a big deal. And to me, the cruisers are always needed. And free cash, I always thought of as being used for smaller items. Yeah, 50,000 for me personally is a lot of money, but in relative to our budget, it's pretty small. And just a point I wanted to make earlier, whether it's relevant here or not, I'm making it, is we couldn't borrow $50,000 for a cruiser. One question we didn't ask Ryan was, but we know from experience, is when he goes out to bid for borrowing, so if he were to send out a $50,000 bid, he's told us, or Gabe has told us, that he won't get any offers. He won't get any takers because the banks don't want to borrow that little amount. So to me, I understand, Bob, the significant point that you're making. To me, because the banks wouldn't lend it to us, I don't see it as a significant amount. That's just me.
Susie.
We borrow it, so don't get me wrong.
So on our capital planning committee recommendation chart in 2018, the, what was it called? It was called the, where'd it go? Was it 2018? 2019. In 2019, the police cruiser was paid out of free cash. And earlier than that, the previous police car was paid out of capital stabilization. I think really the question here isn't so much which account, it's the impact of having a 2/3 vote versus a majority vote. And the other piece might be that I don't know if choosing one account over the other would give us more or less flexibility. One would be more or less of a political process at town meeting, but I don't know if there's any flexibility attached to making that choice.
AJ.
Yeah, so just in the interest of compromise and moving us forward here, can I offer an amendment to the motion on the table, which would be to move $350,000 from free cash into stabilization accounts?
He needs a second.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. As a modification to your,
As a modification to the, the original proposal by Jim was 500. George came back with 250.
yeah.
Now, AJ is recommending a midpoint of 350 and I'm seconding it.
Okay. Okay, do we want to discuss this some more?
Yeah.
Do we want to have a vote?
Sure.
Okay.
Arvanitis will say aye to that compromise motion.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Walton, aye.
Aye.
Wow.
We're not in DC, I know that.
Are we done with capital yet?
Hope so.
Yes, I think so. We started an hour early.
Yeah. I'm going to finish an hour late.
Wait a minute.
I personally, I thought it was good discussion. I think a lot of the discussion we had for this topic tonight really will lead us to future decisions and future directions. So I think it was worthwhile. I think it was productive myself. Okay. Susie,
So Jim, if we are gonna have a discussion about the budget and any other use of free cash, do you know where you see that in our calendar?
about another discussion about budget and free cash.
Yes, using free cash. We've
Um,
had a couple of pieces floating.
yeah. Yeah,
The next meeting
yeah,
is,
what
yeah,
I think it's gotta be
there's
next
two,
meeting.
there's both, there's the free cash topic and then there's the stabilization topic. And both of those have a subtopic of recommend fiscal year 22 level. And I'd say, I don't think we're gonna really have that complete until we get through the budget process, right?
so maybe the discussion, if we decide to talk about using any more free cash in this budget, it would come up under warrant articles approved for town meeting, which is our 5/12 meeting.
yeah, so
And
this,
yeah,
there isn't dates under these, but I would say, yeah, the recommend fiscal year 22 level will happen when we wrap up the budget.
okay.
Does that
Got
make
it.
sense? Does that make
Where are
sense?
we on the budget?
What's that?
Where are we on the budget? I
We're getting
mean,
closer.
obviously,
Becky, you want to weigh in on that?
I had one new item brought forward by a select board vote at their last meeting. They voted that 0.25% be added to the 1.75 COLA as acknowledgement of COVID and as sort of a to thank all the employees for all the additional things they had to do to keep things normal this year. And so they voted that at their last meeting.
Wait, so that was 2.5% on top of the one?
No, it's 0.25% on top of the 1.75 equal 2.0.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I would put that in the category of our next agenda item here, Becky, updating our fiscal year 22 revenue and expense documents.
Okay, and I agree, but I'm getting the sense that that will have to wait till the next meeting. I'm looking at everyone. Is that true, or
But-
is
but
it
you want-
to start the budget discussion?
Well, you want the COLA needs to happen tonight, but you want the rest?
No,
or-
no. I just was, you asked me about where we are at with the budget. I told you that there's not that one open, there's that new item.
Yeah.
And then
the planning
I
board too.
have the planning board. I've got to confirm which number to put in there.
Yeah,
And then I've got the open contract for the police meeting on the 11th. I don't know if I'll learn anything there or how we're going to deal with that. And then I've got, I put the treasurer in for his 2.5 additional hours. And my contract is to be signed on Thursday. And so I'll have a final number there. And once those things are all final, as far as I can tell, I think we're good. So we're not far off in what you last saw. The cost of the select board initiative is $1,010, $1,010.
With that 0.25 COLA increase, is that what you mean?
Yep.
but they've approved that, so that's done. That's done then, right? That's,
Well, we can
We just-
still make a recommendation on the budget.
okay, all right.
I'd just like to ask if Joe Markarian has any guidance about how long finance committee meetings should last. It was 3-hour limit that was recommended by the select board, and even the Pope might have been involved in this, but
Well, it is crunch time before any
Yeah.
other town meeting.
You know, if nothing else, we shouldn't be allowed to be transferring different big sums of money into different accounts late in the meeting, after a 3-hour meeting.
That's right.
Sort of like drinking and driving.
Is next meeting on the 12th? Is that what?
Now, we talked about,
Good,
yeah, next, a week from
It's the
today.
12th, Wednesday?
yes.
Oh, it's Tuesday.
No, I thought we were Tuesday.
No, it's a
Well,
Wednesday.
I'm just asking because I have a select board meeting
Wednesday.
on Tuesday.
Right, so we polled the people and asked, could people meet on that Wednesday, the 12th? And maybe
Okay.
people have changed their lives, but that was the last time we talked.
I've got it written down, Susie.
Okay, so we're looking at next Wednesday,
And that's
Yeah.
our normal 7 o'clock time or?
7 o'clock?
6?
I like that 6 o'clock start, 8 o'clock end though.
So next Wednesday at what time?
6?
How long will that meeting be?
6. Everybody likes 6?
I'll do 6.
All right.
Becky, I'm confused because I thought I saw on the calendar, we had a meeting at 3 o'clock on Thursday this week.
That's the subcommittee that's going to begin drafting the report
Oh,
they're looking at. And so that's a subcommittee. You gotta look at the agenda too, because you can find out you're not on it.
okay. Thank you.
That's the
Thank God.
good.
Yep,
And
and that's,
I think it was rescheduled, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's scheduled for 3 o'clock. We tried 6:30, but that's a big meeting time. There weren't enough Zoom slots. So we're gonna
and
meet,
who's that? Susie, Jim, and
just Susie and Jim volunteered.
But all are welcome.
Yes,
Anybody that's not doing anything next Wednesday,
So-
yeah, 3 hours tonight wasn't
Thursday.
enough.
This Thursday at 3.
oh,
2 Thursdays in a row, probably at 3.
yeah,
And it's 4 hours.
beautiful.
No. it's
All right,
not.
so do we want to move this agenda item then, the revenue expense? Do we think we'll be able to move that into next Wednesday's meeting?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it
Right.
sounds like we won't have a whole lot to talk about outside of that.
All
Yeah, I know. Famous last words.
right, do we want to get into committee reports?
I have none. School committee didn't meet.
Capital planning will be meeting on the 17th. The building committee will be doing some work. Hopefully they'll contribute to that work tomorrow night. So probably can report on that to the finance committee next Wednesday.
Okay,
No significant broadband issues at the moment.
awesome. George or Melody, for Personnel Board, or,
Well, I think we hit it out of the park with our policy on COLA.
I think so too.
yeah, that's really cool, really cool.
Yeah,
And
we
George,
haven't met since that last time.
George, that spreadsheet you put together, looking at with the municipal employees in the county, that work you've done on there to take that data and put it in a form that's digestible.
Oh, you've seen that? Yeah. Did I pass that? Did I send that to
Oh, could
everybody?
you send that to us, George?
Yeah, it's still preliminary. It's not preliminary, but yeah, I guess. Can I?
No.
I don't know what the personnel board would say about that.
Oh, maybe I
It's
didn't
a
see
public
it.
record. Oh, that was an executive session.
I think it was.
I think you
Yeah.
have to vote out of executive session and we need somebody to schedule a personnel board meeting because the chair resigned.
Oh, bummer.
Oh,
Is that Ralph?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Bob, if I get the green light, you bet I'll send it. I think there's, but I'll just tell you what it is. It's just, I took the wage and tax, the Franklin County wage, and I keep calling wage and tax, that's payroll, wage and salary schedule. And I just took the numbers off of that and summarized them on an Excel spreadsheet is all I did. But I did adjust them for hourly. And when it comes time for us to look at each individual on that list, we're going to need to look a little more closely than what I just did on that schedule. In other words, everybody's going to have to pull up that wage summary. I'm going to ask everybody on the personnel board to pull it up. And because there are some things that didn't look quite right, not in my terms of my numbers, but in terms of that schedule. And we just need to make sure that by looking at all of them and all the towns together, we can get a better picture. Anyways, I just discovered one minor thing and it makes me a little nervous.
Want to change it?
Numbers are.
Yeah, I might change it. That's all. So I don't want everybody to look at it and think it's gospel. I will send it after our next personnel board meeting. I expect that I'll get the green light to send it.
Okay,
And I'd
thank
be
you.
happy to do that.
Yeah, but
I'll write it in my email when I send it, a caveat.
Susie,
I noticed on Thursday's select board meeting, they are going to be talking about appointments to the police study committee, and the FinCom will be needing somebody to sit on that committee,
to sit on the,
police study committee. So
oh, I said in the meeting that was it the select board meeting on that? I didn't think FinCom they didn't talk about the FinCom participation in that group.
they were dealing with the citizen part, and so now the next part is to deal with a personnel board person and a FinCom person. So I think we're just thinking about it. I don't know, Becky, do you know if they expected a recommendation from our committee by
Yes.
Thursday?
Yes.
By this Thursday?
Yep.
So should we decide that now?
That would be great. Bob is on the union negotiation.
Can we hold this off till next week and discuss this so I can think about it, talk to you about it and see what's going to involve, so before I commit to it?
Well, yeah, I was just saying that Bob's on the union negotiation, which is separate for the police. Melody is also on the union negotiation for the personnel board, right?
No,
No, you weren't. Oh, it's Melissa. I'm sorry. Were you going to be on the study committee? I know Melody had some police
I think
association.
it was the police thing.
Oh,
Yeah, for the personnel board, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to remember. So that's finance committee. Is there any, Bob, you don't want to think about this
Well, I'd
tonight?
like
It's
to
just
know
that
more
I
what
know
went
people
involved
want.
before I commit to it.
But
So
this,
I'd rather not say so yes. I'd rather not say yes right now. But I'll talk to you about what it's going to involve, or ask somebody from the select board who's more knowledgeable than I am. Because
but we need this, Becky, they need someone named by Thursday?
I
It
think
would be
Becky's,
very helpful.
Yeah.
working
are
on
you
it.
going to get the information right now, Becky? Is that what you're doing?
I have a very unstable internet connection at the moment, and I don't
Oh.
know why, so I'm trying not to lose you all. You've been breaking up.
But on the other hand, it doesn't seem, we should be able to come up with someone tonight, no? Susie, you wait.
Well, I have watched the other select board meeting where they went through the process of talking to people, and I'm willing to volunteer, and I'm willing to step aside if somebody else has a burning desire.
Oh,
I'm okay with it.
it's okay. Yeah, it's okay here. Do we need to vote on that, or we just nod, or
Well, we only have one volunteer, so.
I'll
Yeah.
help.
That's
just
pretty much
wish Susie congratulations?
And
Does anybody have a problem with Susie, or would rather be doing it themselves?
that's not a big.
Not any problem. I don't mean any problem, just with regard to.
I have no problem with Susie serving on that, in
Yeah,
that capacity.
okay. All right, Becky, you have what you need?
I do. Thank you very much. And Bob and Melody, are you available on May 11th?
May 11th. Let me see here.
Tuesday
A week
night
from today.
meeting.
I think so. What time, Becky?
That's what I might have to make him change his time. I'm just double checking. Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, I should be around May 11th. Yes.
Okay.
I can do that.
Why you ask?
Because the Teamsters guy left a message and I wanted to check out that date.
Okay,
Oh, well, I'm not the union person. Remember, that's Melissa.
Oh, Jiminy, I can't get it straight. I apologize, Melanie.
I mean, we're both Mel, but you know.
That's right. No, that's not the right one. Bob, I'll call you tomorrow when I get it straight with the guy. I just want to make sure you're around.
I'll be around, so I'm planning on leaving after our meeting on Wednesday, so
Okay,
following morning.
great. Thank you. I'll get back to you. I
Thanks.
won't interrupt anymore, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from Personnel Board? No other committee reports? Any other topics that we should be considering that are not on the agenda? No?
Well, we skipped
Fine.
expenses, but I don't think, you know. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Susie, or, I'm sorry, I thought, Becky, is there gonna be, there should be another updated expense report, right? At some,
That one today.
I
tonight.
received it tonight and immediately sent it out to you guys.
okay, so we'll see one tonight,
Yep,
and then we can review that at next meeting.
that'd be great.
Cool. All right. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I do.
Wow.
I'll second that.
Before 9:01, quick.
Okay, vote.
Arvanitis,
Aye, sorry. I'm usually quick on that. Sorry.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Everywhere aye.
Cashew, eye.
What was your eye?
Walton, aye. And we must note it is exactly 9 PM. Perfect.
Oh, you are good.
Yeah.
Great job, Jim.
George,
Bye.
Celtic,
All we had to do is.
Celtics tomorrow. Let's hope they can get their act together.
I know, waiting and waiting.
I'll tell you, it's an adventure every night.
Yeah.
All right.
You all have a good one. And don't forget us, we're just a week away from our next meeting,
Okay,
or a week and a day.
In a day, 6
Unless you want
o'clock.
to join us, unless you want to join me and Susie on Thursday,
maybe.
Thursday afternoon.
Not this Thursday, the 13th, right? It would be the
No,
13th.
7th.
No, this Thursday.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't make it. I would
No,
have
we
liked
just, we
to.
just meet, you know,
Good night, Bob.
okay. You all have a
Okay.
good one.
See you.
Good night.
Good night.